So it's a pi 4 or something?
It's a pi 3.
Pi 3?
Yeah.
Oh, don't wait on me. I'm just going to look this up in the background. I just
Okay. All right.
keep going with the conversation. This could take a bit.
That's okay. Yeah, actually, that's a good idea. I should have checked that. I was just gonna throw it out for anybody, if you've had experience with it or anything.
I don't actually see it on there. PD sense, I guess.
PD sense
is one of the signals that I see on there. Anyway, looks like it's got a power supply built into it. This is a more complex question than I can probably give you a quick answer to, I thought.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Where are you looking?
Well, I went to I just looked up Raspberry Pi org schematic for the for this thing, and I noticed that it has a pin PD sense, but it's not clear what that's connected to.
Okay.
I'd have to look at a few schematics to see what that actually would look like, but anyway.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. I hear silence and crickets in the background, so.
Yeah, no, we don't have any comments.
There's Pat. I haven't seen Pat in ages. Hi.
Hi, Doug.
Yeah, you've been off in somewhere teaching.
With some teaching, lots of grandkids, and yeah, we were doing some traveling when this COVID stuff started, so we had some trouble getting home. But we're home now.
Where are you coming in from?
We were in Spain.
Oh,
and
wow.
we watched the numbers go up, and we left when they hit about 200. We moved to Portugal.
Yeah.
And we stayed there about 6 days, and we stayed until they hit around 300. And we got home the day before the border closed.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
But healthy, so.
Yeah.
That's good.
So I watched last Sunday and last Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm totally in on buying one of these
3018s. Yeah.
So I guess I'll just wait till a few more people join, and then I'll throw out my questions.
Cool.
I say there's no reason to wait. I mean, we started at 1, so I can start our business. Unless you're looking for better people to answer your question,
No, I was waiting for Dan because I want to piggyback. I want to piggyback on Dan's purchase.
Okay. Yeah, and Olaf has an interesting purchase. He's actually put the order in, if I'm right.
And Olaf's not with us yet.
He said he's coming at 2:30, so
okay.
We'll see how that gels.
Well, okay, well, we'll just wait a few more minutes for Dan, and then I'll throw my questions out. Doug,
Yep.
You showed a really nice box corner fabrication technique, and you mentioned that the plastic had a certain name.
HDPE, high density polyethylene.
Okay.
So it's that is what I think you were looking at. High density polyethylene. It's used for cutting boards. It's food safe. It cuts like a charm. It's nice and soft. The swarf is like mouse poo, but white because it's white chips. But it literally looks like little mouse turds. I tend to buy it in bulk in 4x8 sheets because it's a whole lot cheaper. And I get it in Montreal now from a place called Johnson Plastics, which is just off the 20 near Dorval, the airport. But you can get it here if you just want small pieces. I have probably more than enough to get you a sample while everything else is closed. I use
does it
fairly.
have that waxy smooth feel like Teflon?
It does.
Nylon Teflon. Okay.
Yeah, it's not quite as smooth as Teflon, but it's good. It's about, I don't know, $7 or $8 a square foot when I buy it, Canadian from Montreal. You buy it here, I think it's about $12 a square foot from what's it called there, Canis Plastic. And,
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you milled those corners down so that they could be bent at 90 degrees, you brought it down to what, 1 millimeter?
2, I think. 2.
Okay.
2.
And it doesn't crack at 2?
No. You won't even crack it. You can cut this so thin that it would become like a piece of, you know, the old milk bottles? Remember the milk bottles, the blow form milk bottles?
I do.
You can cut it to as thin as that and it's still flexy. This is always flexy. it never, like it's such a long chain polymer that it never really gives out on you.
Okay.
It's not the only plastic that I use. The other one that is quite nice and I've been playing with is that stuff, which is that's
PVC.
That's PVC, polyvinyl chloride, and it's quite nice because it's a lot heavier and you can glue it using plumbing glue for plumbing pipes. So that's an advantage. The HDPE stuff doesn't really glue very well. I think we did an experiment one time. We used epoxy to glue 2 pieces together and it sort of holds together, but if you whack it, it shears off and you end up with this incredibly thin, perfect piece of epoxy that you can peel off. So yeah, I think it's just van der Waals forces that were holding it. You sort of created enough of a sort of suction on there, but it is not a good material. I never did try, I think Adrian said at one point that if you use a torch on it, you can just brush the surface with a torch and it breaks the bonds. So the long chain bonds that make it greasy get broken and then you can glue to it. But I don't like cooking plastic.
Someone was telling me about methylene chloride that bonds plastic, but I haven't experimented with it too much.
Methylene chloride will bond acrylic beautifully, but it's super carcinogenic. And the other thing about it is it's super volatile.
I know, I had some and it's gone, not because I used it.
Guess what? You ate it.
You ate it. That's the problem with it. So I would not. Yeah, I don't recommend methylene chloride. It's a nasty piece of work there.
It works really well, though. I've used it.
Oh yeah.
I only had a little bit of it.
Yeah, well, you could start with a lot and you'd still end up with little to none.
Yeah.
It's so volatile, it probably went straight up, so it probably didn't go to you. Don't worry. I'm just being silly.
Well, I'm in a basement room and my shop's also my bedroom, but that won't be the situation when I move. Yeah. So it probably wasn't good. Got a good extraction system for solder fumes, at least.
So I guess we're still in show and tell. So that was, I got to turn off the backdrop. It doesn't work.
Things disappear when you turn them to the side.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. So that is my latest CNC board with the motor on it. And so Linux module, Ethernet port, an Arduino running Gerbil, motor shields, a bunch of connectors, some USB stuff that you can plug in, flash drives, and big ass motors. And it works. That's the best part. So it's coming together. So the whole point of it was to develop a bunch of little plug-in modules like those things that I can put different processors in there or different drivers. So it's coming together. But
what's the common bus? Like what?
oh, there is no common bus. The common bus is Gerbil, basically. So what it is step and direction. So I've taken the connectors are PCI connectors, and the reason I picked them is they were super cheap edge card connectors for PCs. So when you plug into it, I think there's 36 connections. So I just wired out pretty much every connection from the processors to the step and direction pins, which are connected to the driver, so I can set the voltage reference and stuff. So most of the signals coming out are related to controlling Gerbil.
Oh,
But if I plug them into something else, I mean, it's all the processor signals. You can call them whatever you want. So on an Arduino, there are 13, about 16 I/O that you can actually use for things. So all of those are available. The other processor has another, it's about 20 some odd, 22 I/O pins that I can use. So I wasn't looking for a bus the way you're thinking about it. It is a bus, but it isn't. It was really just designed to allow me to swap out processors really quickly and test different code and different drivers. So you know the Polulu driver that everybody uses on their little 3D printers or whatevers, that they have basically just a handful of signals: power and ground, step, direction, enable, and a few control signals. So I have all of those on that bus. Now I can plug my own driver in there instead. As long as I have a step and direction input, I can do whatever I want. So hopefully I'll get to the point where I put step and direction into the controller and I'll get servo signals coming out to run a Ray's sending little messages. Yeah, so I'll be able to run a servo rather than a stepper motor.
okay. No, I was just kind of curious that, you know, but you're right. You can get, there's a variety of signals you can use. None of them, you're not talking about traditional bus at all. Yeah, right.
No, it's just more of a breakout board-ish thing, but yeah. But as it, you know, for the function I was looking at is I'm planning on running Gerbil for the most part. And Gerbil, as far as I can tell, has ports to all sorts of things. So Gerbil will run on an Arduino, like a AVR 328. It'll run on an STM processor, but Gerbil on an AVR runs with 3 channels. So you can do X, Y, Z. And I'm interested in, for my pick and place stuff, I'm interested in more channels, like 5 channels. So it's XYZ plus a rotary axis for rotating components, plus some other motion system related to cameras or whatever. So more axes is better. So that's different processor. I understand that the WeMOS or whatever, the ESP32 has a port of Gerbil now running on it, which looks really cool for people who want to run Gerbil wirelessly without, from their cell phone or whatever. There's a prepackaged ESP32. It has a web page. It has, you know, download your files. It's all basically plug it into your motor drivers and you're ready to go. So kind of cool. PS, that might come in handy for people who want to turn their small CNC machines into wireless CNC machines, like Octoprint does for Darcy's 3D printer, but it'll be a CNC variant of that.
Is the advantage of doing that just to make it so you're assuming your PC, your regular desktop PC is not in your workshop, is to be able to communicate it that way?
That is one advantage. The biggest advantage that I see with not directly connecting $1,000 computer to a 48-volt power supply is you can blow up your $1,000 computer really easily when you do something like disconnect the motor or whatever, and it sends an EMP pulse back into your computer and fries it.
I almost blew up a computer doing something like that in university. I think I ran like almost 30 volts into a USB port somehow because I hooked something up wrong on a breadboard.
Yeah, and that's easy. That's easy to do, but it's actually, with motors in particular, it's much more insidious because even if you run it at 12 volts and you think, oh, it's not going to blow it up, when you disconnect, it's a big inductor, so it's stored up a big magnetic field, and when you turn it off, in an instant, all that energy has to go somewhere. So your 12 volts can jump up to 200 or 300 volts and ripple down all the wires and
flyback voltage.
Yeah, exactly. So when things break, so if you're CNCing, your machine's moving around or you're moving gantries and things, you're slowly wearing the wires, you're bending them, twisting them, and eventually they will break. We had that one of, I think, Dave's machine. I couldn't figure out, why is this sort of spotty? Like it started working randomly, and it turned out there was a break in the wire in the cable tray, and it had been used for 2 years. And then we found that wire that was broken and replaced it. And, but when that happens, it does a nasty little kickback voltage.
With the audio gear I work on, the relay circuits, there's always like a flyback diode to stop the voltage, because like they say it can be in a few hundred volts and then it destroys the relay.
Well,
yeah.
So there's probably safety for the machine, of course, but it's also safety for you. You won't get like tennis elbow from back and forth. Make a file, you put it on a folder, you open the folder up, and then put a card in there, load it on there, walk over to the machine, put the card in the machine. I got to print it again. Something went wrong. Regenerate, go through the whole thing, and you wear a path back, and it just it seems too trivial, but it's just it really takes up your energy.
Well, one of the other interesting things about the and I haven't tried this one yet, the ESP comes with, you don't need a client. It runs in a web browser. So with Gerbil, you started off, it was a serial port. You sent data using GStreamer, or Candle, or a whole bunch of other little programs to do this, which we can talk about when we get to people wanting to run their jobs. But that's not always useful. I mean, one fellow had a lot of problems getting Java to work reliably on his various machines because these things all run with Java clients and stuff. If you run it in a cloud on an ESP32 running, everything being served by the ESP server wirelessly, you don't need to understand any of that. It's already installed. When you have your module plugged in, it's serving everything. You just need a browser to work, and that's not rocket science. I think we all have one of those. Or two. Yeah.
Apparently it has a slicer too. So the theory is you can just drop it on your browser and it'll take care. I haven't set that up, but
on your Octoprint, yeah.
But I haven't set that up. I just read about it. All I do now is from Fusion, I can go straight to Octoprint and straight to the machine. It's really nice, and I wind up printing more often. Like, printed 3 parts yesterday that normally I'll do that another time. Maybe I'll put them all over there at the same time, and you wind up, just because that extra minute, it's not just that. I find it disruptive to have to always, you get a little card, it's a little tiny thing, it's so tiny, you got to put it in another holder and then stick it in your computer and all that.
I don't know. I always get the gender of the silly USB stick backwards too. Like you're always trying to stick it in there, and you can't see which one it is. And one computer has it one way, and one has it another. And
yes.
Really?
No, I've read that. That's one of the biggest time wasters in history is the design of that USB plug, because everybody does that.
Yeah.
And then you realize you had it the right way the first time.
Of course, yes.
Yeah. We've all
We've got a
been
new
there.
person there. I don't know if they're going to chime in or not. They're
Yeah.
Grand
Nagus.
Nagus. I don't know what that means.
That's a Ferengi.
Oh, it is, eh? Okay.
That's a Ferengi. That's
What's an anonymous user? Okay.
no, they're there. They can introduce themselves.
He said hi on chat.
Oh, it's Peter. Was it Peter?
Hi there.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
So obviously this Star Trek stuff is just way too cryptic.
Speaking of new members, here's a new member.
Mhm.
I was just walking around this morning in the basement, and then this guy came. Oh yeah, he's in there. Maybe I'll hold it up to the disc cam. It's a spider. Let's see if you can see the spider here. Can you see him?
Oh yeah.
He's really big.
Yeah.
Like he's literally 2 inches across.
Wow. That's a big spider.
I think I'll walk him up to the garden. We can be with his friends.
The wolf spider? Or?
I don't know what it is. I'll take a picture of it, I guess. And I'm sure when I open the bag up, take a picture, he's going to come out and go. That's what spiders do.
The big ones I always see around here are the dog spiders, which I guess are the wolf spiders. They get the cotton.
He's huge, though. He's like this big.
Yeah.
Yeah, those ones get pretty big.
It's the biggest spider I've ever come across in my life, aside from seeing a video of a tarantula or something.
Yeah.
Well, some of the garden spiders here get a little bit bigger. Yeah. But I don't see them around very often.
Pretty surprised.
Oh, there we are. We're back.
Prettier, too.
Okay, I guess Dan's not gonna show. So I have some questions, I guess, for the group. Can I take the screen?
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I agree with what Dan said in the earlier meetings, that hunting around AliExpress seems to be the best price point. But I'm trying to decide between 3 models, and I was hoping to get some feedback. This is the second generation, the common second generation model. Can you see my mouse moving?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that's the typical second generation model. It's going to come in at around $230, $240 Canadian. It may or may not have the clamp for the wider spindle motor, and at this point, I don't really care. So my first question is, should I spend the extra $30 and buy the second generation model with the side plexiglass to keep the dust from spreading too much?
Well, you could use cardboard. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just think it's extra weight, extra stuff to crack or go wrong. But it is nice to put little, I made a whole cardboard thing around mine. And
yeah,
so
I saw the picture that you showed.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Is it, or I mean, they're just too big to actually cut on this router.
Yeah. So that's not really a problem. There's 2 solutions to that. Yes, you can do that.
That's personal preference.
It's personal preference. I think that like if you decided that you didn't want to buy it first off, and you decide you want to cut a piece out of MDF or something like that, or acrylic or whatever, one of us could certainly cut a piece of acrylic for you or whatever.
Okay.
One of the interesting things that I do find about it would be, and yet they do it out of plastic. I don't know why they didn't use it as a structural member to actually form like a triangular T supporting the gantry, because it would make it even more rigid than it is. But anyway, like that's kind of just aesthetic, not structural.
There's no
So I think
Looks
that's
like
just,
there's some support there,
yeah.
but this metal vertical piece has 6 screws on the bottom, so it's not
Yeah.
going to.
Yeah.
It's
Is
not
it
going to
metal or
distort.
PVC?
Oh,
I
I
was
don't know.
wondering if that's PVC or metal.
That looks, it looks like PVC.
Okay.
The claim was aluminum, though, on some of the other ones, but the exact same.
Okay, could be.
Yeah.
There could be
Well,
variety
the
there. That's
table-
another-
Okay. So my second question comes to this. This one vendor now has 2 models. It looks like he's got a 2nd generation and a 3rd generation. This guy here, Zhonghua Jiang.
Mm-hmm.
The black one is 2nd generation. And this silver one looks to me like it's a 3rd generation. It's the one with the, it's got a quad of bolts on the front.
Yep. That was the one Olaf was commenting on.
Right.
I think he bought it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's got 2 differences. Number one, it's got the 4 bolts on the front.
Yep.
There. And the tracking mechanism for the undercarriage is different. Instead of having 5 pieces, it's only got 3 pieces. Can you see the sliders that go
Yeah.
Yep.
on the tracks? Any comments, Darcy, on which
Absolutely. Well,
which
I'll tell you
tracking
that.
mechanism is better?
Well, this is better, okay, by a long shot. And I'll tell you what's getting my attention when I'm looking at this. That knob that's there, it's not just a knob, but there is some kind of a thrust bearing, or even a bearing that's not a proper thrust bearing. But there's some type of a mechanism there that looks like it could take up the screw load instead of putting it onto the stepper.
This guy here. It's
Yeah,
got
that's
the
base
stepper on.
plate.
Doesn't it have the stepper on one end of the screw bolt, and then it's got simply a knob on the other end?
That's right, but it's not just a knob. It looks to me like it might be a bearing that might take up some of the thrust from the screw. And one of the things about the 3018 is that the stepper motor carries the load of the screw. I don't mean the radial load. I mean the load along the axis of the shaft.
Right.
Yeah, and in terms of the 3-part versus the 5, I think that's just great for assembly. Yeah, you know, like you don't have to line things. It's going to be more self-aligning or more. But I really, there's no issue putting them together. I think this machine is a little bit beefier. Like for me.
Yeah, but is it $140 worth of beefier? Because this one comes
depends on what you
in
want.
pretty close to $400.
Yeah, it's a lot more. You start getting on that slippery slope. Oh, do I get a 60/40? Because you can double that, and you're into the entry level of a really, really handy machine. But other things are that this will be heavier. Like it's got the 10 amp power supply instead of the 6 amp. That's because you got a bigger motor. But then that entire truck that carries the spindle motor is constructed from metal and aluminum, whereas the typical 3018 is all plastic. Now, you know, I think it's a slippery slope. I don't think there's anything wrong with this machine at all. I think it's a great machine. I like it. Like I could see myself buying it. I like the 3018 that I have because it's so light. You know, like I walk around, it just runs off of like a laptop power supply, and I can walk it out to the backyard, you know, and do it on the picnic table or bring it down to a public venue and cut hockey pucks up for kids or something like that. Really, really well. Anyway, that's my comments.
Okay, help me, guys. How do I unshare a screen?
Top of the screen.
Yeah.
So,
Right in the where it says
Up in the middle.
the middle.
Top of the screen in the
Yeah,
middle.
Got it.
right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go.
Thanks.
Takes a bit.
Okay, well, I think that's all my questions answered. Doesn't help
It
me
doesn't
make a
to-
decision yet, but
No. I would look closely. The first one you showed me with the plastic side shields, it looks like a PVC. It does not look like it's an aluminum frame for the bottom, but it looks like the gantry plates are 1/2-inch PVC. And not that that's the end of the world. I think Darcy had a PVC machine, and
Yeah, it's fine.
they're quite like PVC has, especially when it's half an inch thick, has qualities that are very similar to aluminum. It's way easier to machine it.
Well, if I can get 0.3 millimeter reproduction when I change bits, that's all I need, right?
I don't think you're going to get more than 0.3 millimeter, but yeah.
You think it might be more?
No, I think that's not a big, in terms of accuracy, that shouldn't be very hard to get.
Yeah, I should think it would be very accurate.
Yeah.
As accurate as any of the regular CNCs.
Yeah.
Unless you go to something really high end, you know.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess the next thing I'm doing is looking for an opportunity to piggyback a purchase with someone else and maybe save some shipping. And if that doesn't happen in the next 7 days, I'll probably just buy it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a good idea. Yeah, I don't see a problem with it. I like that. See, the 3018, the one, well, I think that the two weak points of it are what Ray mentioned. It's a low power spindle. And further, it's like a bushing motor. It's basically a toy motor. But it's in like, say, 50 plus watts. A human is 70 watts. The lasers at the library are 75 top end watts. So you're in the kind of same sort of a class of removing material as the public machines at the library. But Ray's right. If you start doing this, it becomes hobby or it becomes a lifestyle business like what I do. The power starts to be pretty nice. But I think that like when you get to that point in life, one machine isn't enough anyway. So.
And you guys are laughing, but it's true. I mean, Darcy has a bunch, and he's got them both running in parallel, 3 of them running at the same time. I have 2 machines right now, and I will run them usually one at a time. I'm not quite so crazy as Darcy, but I'm getting there. He's training me.
Well, I'm very surprised with myself, finding myself buying a CNC before I buy a 3D printer.
They're both fun.
I don't think that, I think that's not a bad decision. I played the other way, but yeah, they both have their application, but structurally, depending on what you're doing, when you want to make parts that you can actually use that are relatively strong, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
As a non sequitur, Duncan, we were talking about chassis the other week, and I forgot to mention there was another material that I've been looking at. I saw it on Hack613, and I think it's called dye bond is the material. And what it is it's used for making name tags and signage. And it comes in about a 1/16 inch material. It's usually like a PVC core with aluminum on either side of it. So it's a very, very thin layer of aluminum with PVC. Sometimes they're painted. They come in all sorts of wild colors, like beautifully polished laminate colors, like a piano or something that someone's polished. So these small machines would be certainly capable of milling that. And the intent of this material is, at least what I saw the guy doing with it on Hack613, was he was making a piano and he needed the back drop and he had to bend across it. So he created 2 wooden end plates, and then he manually folded, like he V-carved the inside through the aluminum, partway through the plastic, and then just folded it. And he, without any bending or breaks or any of those things, he got a really, really wicked cool finish. You could cut your holes for your stomp box or whatever it is that you're thinking about. So there's another possibility, just.
Are you suggesting making a whole enclosure out of that, or just the back plate like you were suggesting before?
Well, potentially the whole enclosure as a possibility. The other thought, I think about things slowly afterwards. I come across all of these ideas. There are a bunch of other vendors of boxes beyond Hammond, including, I don't remember what they're called now, but they're generally vacuum formed or not vacuum, or not vacuum cast, but injection molded casting. And they all have face plates, but they're made out of plastic and they look really slick. but they just use a standard flat faceplate on either edge, which would be a lot more machinable for you. So I think rather than just limiting yourself to Hammond packaging, I think you should think about looking at other packaging on AliExpress.
Maybe. There was something with a nice flat faceplate that was.
Yeah, well, the flat faceplate gives you the ability to use printed circuit boards as your cover, but you could also use this other die bond material or all sorts of things. But sheet metal is hard. Like, unless you have a sheet metal brake, you got a problem.
I got a like $80 brake from Princess Auto.
Okay. Yeah. Well, then maybe not the end of the world. But
you just got to use vice grips to hold the bar onto it, as opposed to an actual. Doesn't have like a clamp built in.
Yeah. Do you remember what those things were called, Greg? You know, those plastic packages that we used to use for. I can't.
Pomona boxes.
Sorry.
Pomona boxes.
Was that one of the names of them?
Well, they were little die cast boxes. The ones, remember, that Nortel originally had.
Those ones are the bricks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are a little heavier than I was thinking. It was more like a clamshell plastic box. I'm sure DigiKey, if you looked under boxes on DigiKey, you'd see some too. So.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
If it was something like plastic, but with a metal faceplate, I could probably make that look better than just like.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because like all his audio stuff has a nice faceplate, anyways.
Right. So, anyway, just some thoughts. And to Darcy's question, another random thought I was reading, we talked briefly about your sketchitis, that is using Fusion and not being able to drag those construction lines. That's a tough problem, but I have been playing. If you ignore all of the other design elements like extrusions and making three-dimensional objects and just work on the sketch aspects, I have discovered that you can use the drag horizontal or drag vertical in the X button to turn it into a construction line. And it's not like dragging a parallel line, which I really liked. But within the positioning utilities, like when you select an object, you can then tell it to line up with that point. So it gives us effectively the same thing that we had, and that maybe I have to show you that. But
I think I just need practice, or I need to see other people doing it, because the way I'm doing it, it doesn't come out as free and like you know, it's sort of like running through a field of flowers when I'm using SketchUp. I'm so used to it.
Well, there were probably a second problem that I keep running into, and that is constraints. Not that I set constraints in Fusion, not by my own choice. I mean, sometimes I'll constrain the dimensions or something, but Fusion wants to outthink me, and it constrains objects to snapping grids and to corners and to the origin and stuff.
Well, I think you can turn all of that off.
You can. Well, you have to sort of turn it on at some point when you want to go to cam, but those constraints of, like, if I just stay focused on the sketching and looking where the constraints are actually marked when I click on things, you can actually realize that turning the constraint off allows you to move things more easily and align to an arbitrary grid that you've drawn. But it's different. It's definitely different. It is not my headspace yet.
Well, maybe the constraints are the answer to your construction lines. You just have to use the right constraint and know the right hotkeys.
Yeah.
It is, but do you want, if I could have the screen for a minute, I can show you something that I did. I went to SketchUp to do it. Mm-hmm. And actually, this is no big problem of Fusion. It's not like I'm not going to adopt Fusion. Like I'm in now. But it's just when I went to make the fixture for my moon print the other day, I wound up just switching over to SketchUp, not necessarily for the cam, but for the creative process. And it was easier for me to actually get the problem solved. And if you want to get, if you want to see me do it in SketchUp, you can show me, or we can start to think through the type of workflow that I'm finding worked really well for the creative side of it. You know, how to solve the problem solving. Not, it's like once I know all the dimensions, I can just get in there and punch in the dimensions. There's no question. But I don't know the dimensions, and I don't always want to work with dimensions. Sometimes I want to work abstractly. For example, I want that piece to be 2 inches from over there. I know that's a constraint, but I don't want to work with the word 2 inches. I want to work with, well, the difference between that page and the other thing. You know, like I'm thinking in a more abstract way.
So what I think, I've been trying to figure this out, and the constraints actually help with this in a peculiar way. You constrain, you know, you want corners near the corners that are in, like, or holes near the corners that are offset in. And no matter how you move the box around, because you don't know how big it's going to be, at least the corner mounting holes are always 1/4 inch in from both edges. And by applying a simple constraint to that, you don't have to pay attention to it anymore. You can change the diameter of the holes. It will change all of the holes at once and keep those dimensions. And it's just a different way of viewing the world. And as I say, there's about, I don't know, 10 different constraint options that you can pick. You can look for symmetry. You can look for parallel objects, perpendicular objects, distances. And all those little wiggly lines, they're all way too small for me to see, even on a big screen. I always find them like, what the hell is that? I don't know what that symbol means. But I think that's where we have to really practice to get rid of this sketchitis issue that we have.
I had a lot of trouble with it. I really beat my head against it for a long time.
Yeah.
Well, I'll show you something that there were 2 jobs I had recently that it just was so easy. Just go to SketchUp. It was just a beep, 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 and I was done. And I know I had to type a couple of numbers in while I did it. So I made this moon print. You guys all know about the moon print that I've been working on. And when I made the fixture, so I've got a certain size of the paper and a certain size of the print itself, and I'm trying to build the registration fixture, which helps me put the plates on the paper all the time in the same spot. So here, I'll just share quickly. And so this is SketchUp for those that haven't seen it. So my print is 5 inches. So I punch in 5 right now. And I know now that that's 5 inches. So then I do another 5 over here. And then from here, I can just complete this. So far, you could get this done just as well in the other object, in Fusion. But now, I'm going to just move this up here. See, that's what I need. I like doing this a lot, like, you know. And then, now my paper, on the other hand, is 8 inches. So I would put in, say, 8-inch piece. So I'll pick the line here, and then I'll do 8 inches across, 8. And then it happens to be, well, I'll just do 8 again. So there's my piece of paper I'm going to use to snap that piece there. I notice all the snapping stuff. This all works beautifully. Now, I know these are going to be concentric, so I bring this over. I can snap quickly to, I got to get here, and then I want to pick up just the edge here. So I'm just going to pick that up. And what I want from life now is I want this all to be centered, you know. So I pick the center of this, I come and I touch off, and I can slide to the center of that thing. Then I can go up. And then I just do the same thing over here. And then now, you see I'm centered. So this is what my print's going to look like. That's the edge of my 8-inch paper. That's my 5-inch. Now to make this I got easy. So that's not creative. I just needed to draft up my print. Now I want to build the fixture. This is where I just found it easier to do this thinking part here. So the fixture, I'll show you what it looks like. Put my spider aside. This is what I came up with. I can't see that very well, or can we? Maybe I'll just switch off my background. Where's the button for that? Oh, here it is. Video, choose virtual. Get rid of the back, and then done. So it's what I came up with, you see? It's just a sheet with an edge with a dog bone so that I can push the sheet in there. And then this thing goes into there, you see? So now you put the sheet, then you put this, and then you put the block in the hole, and you run it through the little press thing that I got, and boom, you just keep on exchanging the block into the same hole, and you'll always get a registration. So here's how I did it. I'm like, oh, I don't want it to be any bigger than needed, right? So then I thought, well, I probably need it to be 3/4 of an inch. So I came here and I just went 0.75 and then 0.75, just like that. And then now I know exactly, you see, so that means that the base of this thing has to basically be at least this big right here. See, I just drew the base. So the base is now done, okay, on this object. Then to get the piece that I'm going to stick on top of the base, I simply double click and then hit Control C, pick it up and stick it here. And now that's the part. So I'll probably just put a dog bone on there, since knowing a piece of paper is coming here. That's 1/4 inch, that's enough. Then I just erase right here. And so that's, so the lower base is done, and as is the edge for me to lean against right here. Next, all I have to do is make the frame. So then I get thinking, well, to make the frame, I need only probably 3/4 inches from here. So I just do 3/4, whatever. I don't need it to, you know, go any further than I need than here. So 3/4, and then now actually, and I should have made the base this piece after. So then I say, oh, well, I can shave this off of there because I don't need that. There. So now I'm all done. All I got to do is color this away. There. So I should have made this. So I'll just take this piece away and I'll do it again. So I double click here and this goes here. That's a piece right there. And then this other piece right here is the frame. So I just pick that piece up right there. Now this is going to come down to, I'm sure, just experience. And then I put dog bones here. So all I got to do is make these 3 parts now. And boom, I just cut them just like that. And there's the thing, fits together. Everything is 100%. So I just couldn't get the thinking process done because I needed oh, I just need to move this over by 1/2, 3/4, and then do that and then put that together. All that work, oh, I got to click here, right click and make that, hit the X key, and then I was losing my mind in those details, and I couldn't do the creative part of how do I make this jig. And I just was able to, I probably could have done it on, no, I would have, probably paper would have been, you know, but I think this worked for me better than paper because it's erasing it and moving around. Yeah. I used it like paper. I'm not doing really the cam here. I'm doing the creative. Like, what do I need? I need something that's kind of further over here than that thing by 3/4. I can shave this off. I need a dog bone over here. So yeah, I could have done it on paper and then gone to Fusion because I know all these. Today, right now, I'll tell you something. I don't know the measurements on this thing because the only measurements I know is that hole is 5 inches, and that's it. That 8-inch paper is gone because I shaved it. So I know there's a measurement here, which is 8 minus 0.75. There's a, you know, but I don't know that. No, I can calculate the number. But my point is, I'm not thinking in those numbers. You see, I'm thinking is, and just with that, it's SketchUp-itis. I've been using SketchUp now for a few years, and that's the way that I'm doing the problem solving.
Well, I had a similar problem with the blue lines because when I studied drafting, you do all the horizontal lines and you do all the vertical lines and you do all the diagonal lines and you do the circles. And if you try to do that in Fusion, you might as well just shoot yourself. Every time I start thinking about what I'm doing in terms of the creativity thing, I start making those mistakes because I was good at doing the other way. And so unthinkingly, I'm making this repeat mistake. So it just took time. It just took time to adjust over.
There'll be a new workflow, you know, that I'll discover in there. And eventually my brain will be wired around that instead. So what I'm hoping for is that over, you know, just seeing, I think what we were doing was sharing back and forth with making things in Fusion 360. Yep. I just probably need a little more than that. I know we've probably mostly worn ourselves out over that because that seems to have tapered off. But I probably need more of that. Pardon?
What's the next challenge? That's next week. What is it we're supposed to do?
Oh, I don't know what it is. And And I also started to,
It's hard to do it if you don't know what it is.
exactly. So I also started to make my little paper holder, and I started modeling stuff in there. And for that, I already made 4 of them. I already threw them out, or 3 of them, sorry. And the idea would be like a strip that has slices in it. And when you bend the strip, all the little cracks open up in it. And I would just place it on the table. And as I make my prints, I would just put them in there. And then when I take it out of the fixture, it would snap straight. And it would pinch down all the piece of paper. I'd pick it up, and I got like 20 pieces of paper, you know, in one clamp. And so to make this piece, first I made a 10 centimeter strip, 1 centimeter high. And then I went making the little grooves on it. And of course, while I was in the sketching software, I sketched the one groove, and then I did a rectangular pattern to repeat the groove across my work. And then, but I found that after doing that, there was a different gap on each side. So I thought, well, I'll just I'll increase the gap so it goes off the edge, and I'll remove the last one, you know, as I was making the pattern. And it said when I tried to remove the last one, you should go back to making your pattern and just make it one less rather than delete this thing. It actually came out and said that to me. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm in a sketch. I can't get back to anything. I was like, oh, so maybe I'll do the whole thing again. This time I just made the base piece, extruded it up, and now I'm doing a drawing on top surface to extrude that down. And then if I extrude the feature in the 3-dimensional space, then I can get back to the rectangular pattern. But when I was in the sketch, I didn't know how to get back to the rectangular pattern. Maybe I can, but I didn't know how. I would have had to go and delete all of the pieces I put in and then redo the repetition of the pattern. So I just delayed that part until the 3-dimensional part anyway. So again, I was like, well, gee, there's a lot of options here, and it seems, you know, this is just experience. And now, because I'm enjoying the Fusion so much, and I'm starting to adopt it in my actual work over and above SketchUp, I'm starting to get demanding on it. Like I say, I want to be able to, I'm getting greedy. Like I want to go able back and do that really fancy feature of redoing the, what do you call it there, the rectangular repeat pattern, you know?
But I think what happens with some of those things like the rectangular repeat, Fusion is automatically embedding within those constraints that you don't necessarily see. So until you turn off those constraints, when you try and muck around with that object, it says, no. You said there were 5 slots in this and you're cutting one out. You told me it was 5. I'm not going to let you do that. So now you're butting heads against it. And this is why I say, I think we need to really, for me, I need to sort out how those little symbols relate to what's going on. Some of them just are not all that obvious that you can't even really see how what's related to what, and things get tied together, and then it prevents you from doing even the most mundane thing like dragging.
Yeah.
And when the move doesn't work, I throw up my hands and I go back to SketchUp to get the job done so that I can continue to play.
Well, the move command in SketchUp, if you try to use it as the move command, will drive you nuts.
Yeah.
But you're not supposed to move.
No.
Not SketchUp, Fusion. I mean,
Fusion, yeah.
If you can move it in Fusion, that's a test that you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, but in terms of,
it isn't fully constrained.
No, absolutely. But this is the distinction of the way we think about problems. And we don't want constraint when we're doing this very loose type sketching design.
Yeah, exactly.
Not a
later in the
design. So as you're developing an idea, it's useful. But I think ultimately it just comes down to understanding what those constraints actually are. So when it tells you it's not going to let you do it.
Well, once you make a component, you can move it around.
Yeah, but that presumes you can actually make the component the way you want with the features you want. And that's where I'm running into problems.
Baby steps.
Baby steps. Yeah, exactly. One thing that I would...
Don't look at it as a draftsman. Look at it as a machinist. And so you make your block and then you cut it down or add to it. And then the problem that you're having, I think, will disappear. So the thinking is really a bit different.
No, but because if I imagine, like, even in a simple thing, you have a 12-inch piece of material, and I want to drill a couple of holes in it. at specific positions. But I don't know what those positions are when I start, because I haven't measured them. But I know that I'm going to need 5 holes to mount this thing. So I drop 5 holes on there, and now I have to align them at the right positions.
All right.
And that's where it starts to get kind of gnarly. And you can do it in...
but there'd be a sketch for that, and you can change the sketch for the holes.
well,
You do your block, and then you put a sketch on the block.
Yeah.
And
Or just have a parameter for the holes. That's what I'm doing. So you can have a parameter for the spacing or the location of
if
the
you
holes.
want to go parameter, that's even more versatile.
But it's not really like I'm not like trying to say there's anything wrong with Fusion or something should change. It's just more like I'm used to working a certain way, or I even need to be part of a creative process. You know, like Doug says, I know there's going to be 4 holes, so I'm going to put them down. And now, but later, I have to draw 10 more things on this object before I have anything to align it with.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to, at times in your work, be able to move things and realign them.
And that's where I get into the problem where it seems to find some constraint when I dropped it, and it won't let me move it later. And when I remove the constraint, then I can move it freely, and I'm all happy. The other thing, I'm going to drop off shortly, like 2 minutes from now. But one other thing I would say about Fusion that is kind of a joy is in SketchUp, when you overlap a circle on the edge of a straight line, it becomes attached unless it's a separate grouped object
They call it
or something.
syncing.
Yeah.
It's called syncing.
Well, that syncing feature also, to me, is a real pain, because if you drag and drop your holes on the edge of a line, well, now your line has a kink in it, and it's really hard to delete. You have to delete both halves of the circle and stuff, and then there's still a little funny segment and stuff. So one nice feature of the sketches in Fusion is you can overlap 15 items on top of one another, and they will not sync to one another unless you force them to through a constraint. That's awesome.
Yeah, it works beautifully. Yeah.
So I think, we will figure this out and change our behavior so that we can actually design within it. The tool is more than adequate.
Oh, yeah.
But some of
the
the teething issues with it are really... I found a video, and I will send it out on the link. He's a bit tedious, and they're kind of slow, but he sort of goes over this early parts of sketching in a way that actually kind of makes sense to me. Or more sense than some of the other ones that I've looked at, because he's not trying to design anything complex. He's just showing you how to use the tools. And sometimes he prattles too far, but it's a start. So I'll send that off. Anyway, I'm going to leave for the moment, and hopefully I can get back this time, but who knows? I'm not in control of my life. So,
okay, Doug, I'll, if
see you tomorrow.
Okay, you don't come back, I'll talk to you tomorrow then, okay?
Okay, righto. Bye.
Okay,
See you later.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just have to adjust your brain to the new process. I think that's just it. And I still jump into Inkscape, and I still jump in. I don't, not so much SketchUp anymore, or do work on paper before I go into the Fusion.
Yeah, and my Moon project is actually in Inkscape.
The what? Which program?
My moon, it's all done in Inkscape. So I started this in Inkscape. So I was pooping on Fusion. I just realized that it was actually Inkscape that I was in. But the draw for me to do the process of coming up with this fixture could have brought me to Fusion, or it could have brought me to Inkscape, but it brought me to Inkscape. And that was what I was saying, is that, that for that type of a creative project where I just wanted to move this a little bit, flip that over there, I found that I could do that fast in Inkscape. I mean, in Fusion, Jesus, I don't even know what the software is anymore. SketchUp. Yeah. So I want to see more people working in it, like more of our challenges, so I get to see how people are solving these problems.
In Inkscape?
No, in Fusion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought I could just draw my fixture in Inkscape, but I would have wound up writing out numbers on papers. So I found that I could do the arithmetic right in SketchUp. And I could have done the arithmetic to set it all up in Fusion, but I know it would have taken me a lot longer. And I would have had to do the creative process in my head instead of using a tool. A lot of that's just because I'm newer to Fusion, I think.
Yeah, I think that's just a familiarity issue. Mostly.
Yeah. It's a comfort problem. but on all the CNC stuff, I did offer a workshop yesterday actually, and no one was interested. Short notice, you know how things are.
Well, I didn't even notice. I didn't even
Yeah,
notice.
I put it in the list, and I was too late on it. I did it by myself just for fun, and I was to make a business card that you could cut up on one of these 3018s, and this is actually the stamp that I made for making the business card. You can see that it has a bit of finer print, and you know, to get a sense of how much print you can put on something. And then here's the actual. It was easier to see it on this camera, but I got serifs and everything going on it. So it got to be. It looks really good in person, this thing. So was the workshop idea, to show how to make a business card. It was kind of practical for some people, kind of fun.
But
and yeah, go ahead.
Darcy, why did you choose to print in the negative?
Oh, because it was printing with a block of cherry. This is cherry.
Yeah.
And when you're carving, it's easier to make a negative than a positive, because the positive is a small feature. And when you're carving a small feature, it's easier to just break it off.
Of course. But
Yeah.
it's
So this is a very robust stamp. It's very easy to ink, because you just roll the thing across it. And if you have the other positive, when you're rolling the ink's getting on the wrong part all the time. It's just, yeah. So for usability, and I feel, I'm not 100% sure, but I feel that I can get more detail on here in the negative than the positive. I think that it's more riveting of a card, you know, like it's more of a noticeable card, you know.
Yes. Now, do you bleed, when you cut the cards, do you bleed the ink off the edge so there's no white border?
No, I'm putting it exactly 100%. So when I cut these up, I'll cut it right on the line. Yeah.
Okay.
And the bleeding, I did think of that actually. And I did, you see, this is just kind of the reason I personally, aside from the little workshop that we could do for the 3018 style machines, but I've been doing printmaking and I waste paper. So I got these this is a wasted print. You can't tell very easily, but there is a failed moon print on the back of this thing. And so now it's a moon and my card is on the moon. So this is really expensive, thick paper, this stuff here. So I don't like the idea in my printmaking hobby of, you know, oh, I tried that 8 times. And that's, well, it's $7 worth of paper. And it's such nice paper for something like business cards. So I thought that I could just convert all my fails into business cards so that I don't feel, and plus at the end of the printing job, like I printed a moon last night, and I had ink left over, where you clean it up and you wind up throwing it away. So what I do is I take the knife and I scrape up all the ink into a ball, and I scrape it off all the brayers that and down to 1, and I make a few cards out of it. So the cards are coming out of 100% re-up ink that would have been thrown out, and the material. Plus, I get to show off, hey, look what a 3018 can do.
Can't hear you, Pat. You're muted.
And they're all colored sort of a dirty brown, muddy.
Yeah, it all becomes mud.
Yeah.
Well, but my moon, here, I'll show that off now, is like this, and it has a lot of black on it. So it turns out in terms of the color theory, you're winding up being pretty well perfect black at the end of my leftover. Because I start with the lighter plates, and then I print until I get low on that ink, and then I do another batch of ink and I make it darker. So by the time I get to the end, I'm on the black. So if I barely have any of the white ink left, so it comes out pretty well perfect black in this case. But in other fun printing jobs, there'll be all kinds of fruity colors I'll have on my cards. It's gonna be fun.
Well, I think Duncan is probably the youngest guy here, so I may bore you with an old guy war story. In 1988, we started writing Corel Draw, and I was the main software guy.
I vaguely remember that software. I don't know if
Corel, it's before your time, Duncan.
It's like when I was growing up, my mom probably had it on her computer.
Oh, your mom, right. Nice.
Just to make you feel a little older.
So it was supposed to be a vector program, like Inkscape. But we realized pretty early on it would be nice to bring in some bitmaps and trace them. So I wrote the code to find the outline of the contour of a a bitmap and turn it into vectors. And we were originally designing the program for artists, but somebody in the sign cutting industry discovered what we were doing. Oh yeah, one more thing is part of CorelDRAW, it was supposed to be a PostScript generator. It would generate PostScript so we could take advantage of these fancy printers at the time. So somebody in the sign making industry discovered that we were outputting gobs of moves. Move, turn, angle, turn, lift, pen, and so on. And they begged us, could you please change this from PostScript to something like Gerber or sign cutting commands. And within a year, we had this whole sub-industry of sign cutters who were cutting vinyl with pens. And totally unexpected market. We certainly weren't designing for it, but these guys got quite vocal, and they steered the product significantly during the early 90s. But I guess they're probably all using Inkscape now, I guess. I don't know.
And Illustrator.
Well, Illustrator existed a year and a half before CorelDRAW, and we basically cloned it. So Illustrator had a head start, but they didn't accommodate the sign maker guys. So when Corel offered the sign makers that we would produce code that would drive their vinyl cutters, they were quite happy, and they were quite loyal. They stuck with us for years.
So I have a big laser cutter, like a bigger one, like one of the, not a desktop one. It's a Chinese one, but it's a branded Chinese one. The brand is called Red Sail. So it's one of the few Chinese, if you buy cheap stuff, Red Sail's one of the actual brands. And the actual firmware of that thing includes CorelDRAW, a Chinese hacked CorelDRAW that's integrated right into the software tool chain of that machine. I thought you'd find that amusing.
I miss Corel WordPerfect.
It had legs. It certainly had legs. There's a similar story for WordPerfect. WordPerfect always had the ability to see the hidden codes.
Oh, that's what I missed the most.
It was called Reveal Codes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I missed.
So you could see where it changed to bold and it changed to italics, and when there was a marker for a subscript and all that, you could see it. It was all laid out. And Microsoft never seemed to offer that. But the lawyers in the States loved it, because so often they would cut and paste a document for one client and they'd use it for another client. And if you do that with Microsoft Word, there's all of these hidden codes and undos that are in the original that you can't visually see. So you could take a document for one divorce case and copy and paste it into another divorce case. But if you could reveal codes, you could see the names of the clients buried in the doc file. So the lawyers really loved WordPerfect because they could see all of the hidden stuff and flush it out. And to this day, the American Bar Association still loves WordPerfect. You do one thing once and you're good for 20 years.
Anytime I screwed up anytime some sort of formatting was screwed up on WordPerfect, you could always like reveal codes and then fix
Alt
it.
F3. You just remembered it. Is it Alt F3 to get the reveal codes?
I think so.
Do they still make that program?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
For that very reason.
If we're going to tell old stories, this is probably back in the early 80s when the whole concept of word processors were brand new. And I remember I was working in a group. There was actually a secretary assigned to the group who was doing our typing. This is classic 1960s stuff. And I remember I was writing a document by hand, and I think I had underlined my headings. And then she gave me back what she'd done, and she hadn't underlined the headings. So I said, underline the heading. Now I was thinking of a classic typewriter, put it in, hold the shift key down, underline, and just underline that way. And she looks at me with panic in her face. I don't know how to do that. Am I right? Because I didn't know she was using word processors at all. I thought, what a moron. Gee, she can't do right. Make a typewriter, underline what lettering. But what she was saying is she's using word processors. She didn't know how to make the word processor underline like that.
Hey, Adrian, long time no see.
Yeah.
Hi, yeah. Hi, Pat. Hi, Darcy. Hi, Greg. Duncan.
Hey, Adrian.
I haven't met before. Hello.
Hey.
I'm Adrian. Yeah, it's been busy. I'm going to tell you a funny story. In that, Doug and I used to meet up every Tuesday at one of the coffee shops, typically the Bridgehead on Fairmont. And we were both using, we both used the same PCB manufacturer, PCB Way in China, right? And every time I would have a chat with Doug, the following day my PCBs would arrive. It was like frigging clockwork. So I spoke to him the other day, got off the phone. It was only a short conversation. 2 PCBs arrived. Nothing has come from China, right? I don't know about if anybody has any items being shipped, but it's almost nothing has come. Anyway, 2 PCBs arrived. So I get on the phone and I said to Doug, I said, I don't know what you're doing, but I've got another 4 with DHL shipment. And we finished the second phone call. I put it down and I could hear crunching of a DHL lorry coming down the lane with the other 4 PCBs. So I've been very busy with 6 PCBs coming back. So anyway, there's my Doug story.
Could cause a lot of traffic to go Doug's way.
Yeah, I don't know what he's doing, but I just sent him an email saying, keep up the good work.
Doug is just at it all the time. I just, you know, well, I guess the fact that he doesn't have a wife, that probably helps to a certain extent. But it just amazes me what that guy does. It really does.
Oh.
Stuff from China takes a long time to get here the best of days, but I guess DHL should be better.
Well,
I had my first item from China in 10 weeks came in yesterday.
If I order something on eBay from China with free shipping, I'm lucky if I get it at all.
Oh, have you actually had nothing like stuff you've ordered and it just never appeared?
Yeah, but never anything expensive.
Oh, okay.
If I see anything from China on eBay with free shipping, well, there's a reason it's free. I just give it a pass now.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Like either a few bucks of ICs or like something that was like $10. If it was something more important, it'd probably be shipped with something like DHL anyways.
Okay.
My roommate's parents sent him some masks from China, and they took at least 2 months to get here.
Yeah. Even Canada Post has gotten really slow now.
I think that's part of the issue, right? Everybody's ordering from home. Canada Post, by its very nature, is dogged with all sorts of issues, internal issues. The unions are trying to make sure that their workers are properly looked after, and if you look at sorting facilities and so on, they're not designed for any separation.
Absolutely not.
In fact, they're designed for people to be very, very close to each other. So, yeah, it doesn't surprise me that things are going a little haywire. But here's what it is, and we have to learn with it. I hope everybody on the call is well and their families are well.
Yeah, so far.
So far.
Excellent. Excellent.
My family's in Saskatchewan. As far as I can figure, everything is cool.
Good, good. The only thing I don't know, were people going around the loop? I don't know whether you can see it. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's one of the boards that came back. My son and his fiance do a lot of plant propagation for the gardens that we have here. And one of the things they're really interested in is modifying the wavelengths of light or the balance of different light wavelengths in propagating plants depending on the stage of growth. And in order to do that, they need some sort of color analyzer to determine the color temperature and then adjust that accordingly. So that's exactly what this unit is. So at the top left-hand corner, there is a little module, a color analyze module, and it has, it's the tiniest of sensors, but it has the ability to pull out red, green, and blue components. And then from that, you can derive things like color temperature, balance, the amount of white light in there, and so on. And then the rest of it is just analyzing that. And the outputs then will feed into some high power LED lights that he's got with different color frequencies in them. So you turn on as many or as few as you need in order to adjust the color balance depending on the growth. So the next thing will be to actually have another sensor which measures the color of the growth, you know, whether it's leafy, whether it's flowering and so on, and then use that in the feedback loop to change the color in a dynamic way depending on the plant's growth. So that's kind of neat. I threw a little SPI-based LCD OLED on there, and there's a slew of other bits and bobs on there just for control. And of course, Greg, there's another ESP32 for you.
Yep, absolutely.
Adrian, that color sensor, is it absolute or do you need to calibrate it?
It's absolute. I couldn't tell you off the bat how accurate it is, but Samuel does have a lux detector, and it was reading within 5% of the commercially purchased lux sensor. So from that perspective, at least it's aggregating the light and showing that correctly. Yeah.
It's funny. I was just having that problem.
Sorry?
I was just having that problem like 2 days ago. I was doing like some printmaking, and I made a 7-layer project. And I thought, well, that's going to be really easy because it's 7 different shades of gray, starting with off-white, white, and ending with black. So I thought, that's obvious. You just add a bit more black as you print your plates. And I found that it was really tough. It was really difficult because how much black to add, you know, is getting really, really tricky. And my eye, which is usually really, I always found that I'm really good at light, but I was having a lot of trouble with it. And I was starting to think, well, maybe I need to measure. Like I need a measure, like not just weighing the paint, like Ray was mentioning, maybe use a syringe to get things under more quantity control. But I was just thinking maybe I need like a spectrometer-y kind of a thing to try to look at the shades. Yeah? Okay, because the problem is there's shades of gray. So I'm working on value, you know, which is some kind of a sum of some kind of the RG and B. Anyway, that's interesting.
If anybody's interested, I can send you the spreadsheet. Sorry, not spreadsheet.
Your bill of materials,
the data sheet of the RGB sensor itself. I purchased this little module some time ago, but it's an I2C device, and there's a whole bunch of internal registers. There are about 6 or 7 levels of gain. There are lots of other interesting things you can do with the registers. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if you could pull out some really good monochrome values.
How do you deal with the optic side? Do you have lensing so that you can direct it? Because what's the field of view and so forth?
No, there is no lensing. It is true. You have to get relatively close. There is. I don't know if you notice. Let me see if I can put the. And there's the little module, and you see the white LED that's beside the sensor. Sensor's tiny. You see it?
Yeah.
It should be in the center field right now.
Yeah, I see it.
So there's a white LED there to illuminate, and I guess it's looking for the return from the white light and so on.
Now, here's a question. That white LED obviously has good representation in both RG and V, but it's probably thin lines, right? I wonder how that has that.
I don't know. These are good questions, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know. And maybe this is a granularity that really is outside what I'm trying to use it for. Anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting.
Didn't even occur to me that plants might be able to benefit from something like that.
I'm sorry, was that a question? I didn't get
I think it was just a comment, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, apparently at different stages, especially, as soon as they start sprouting, there are different color frequencies which really bolster the plant's growth and encourage its absorption of its own sugar materials, and then the establishing of root structure, establishing of leaf for sucking the carbon out of the atmosphere and so on, and also photosynthesis. So apparently,
sorry, go ahead.
No, Darcy, so apparently, different stages can benefit from different amounts of light. That's all.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've got some garden seedlings upstairs, so like it was something that never even occurred to me at all. So like give the spectrum the closest to sunlight, and that would be the best.
Well, actually, funnily enough, if you look at greenhouses, like commercial greenhouses where they're growing sprouts or lettuce or whatever, they're often now using suite of LEDs as opposed to compact fluorescent, and the special full spectrum compact fluorescent, because with the LEDs they can actually adjust. They may have a portion of reds, a portion of blues, greens, or whatever, and they adjust them so that there is a shifting of the light frequency. It's an aggregate as opposed to the mover frequency, but apparently this is really good, especially for plant propagation.
So what I was going to say, sorry I kept cutting, it's just the delay makes it difficult to actually time my my intrusion. But I was just thinking that I guess in nature, probably the sun is giving you black body-ish kind of, like wide, lots, all the frequencies, but it's free. I guess the value proposition comes in when you're supplying the light. You only want to supply the light that the plant needs instead of all the light all the time. Could that be the value proposition? So it's just as electricity saving.
Well, the value proposition is that I'm not paying for my son's electricity.
Okay, I got it. Yeah, so that's what this is. It's an economy thing. Because the plant only needs certain of the wavelengths at certain times, only supply that, rather than be like the sun giving you the whole whack.
Well, I know in animal husbandry that they use different balances of light spectrum just to keep the animal stress levels down. So maybe certain combinations of light would actually be beneficial for the plant rather than just being a neutral statement. If you get what I'm getting at. Anyway, it certainly brings up a lot of questions. It's really a fascinating thought.
Hello, Ray.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, Dan, welcome.
Hey, sorry I'm late.
What are you doing? You're seeing machine grouping?
Busted.
Dead.
Is that what it is?
It's that group, yeah, but it's a different part.
Oh, it's that group.
It's that group.
All right.
Oh, thanks, that group.
Yeah. Adrian's here though this week. So.
Hello, Dan.
Hey.
Nice
Hey.
to see your smiling face.
Yeah, haven't talked to you in a long time.
And neither have I talked to your wife either for a long time.
Well, she's closing the door to my office.
That's Adrian from the escape room?
That's Adrian from the escape room, yeah.
Adrian from the escape room.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess that's how you're known around here.
Goodbye.
Oh dear. Oh dear. I'm going to have to sign off shortly, and then I'll go on mute. But one other thing, I was speaking to my brother, who's an electronics engineer like me, several years older, and he saw something in the UK which he found very amusing. It was this box, and all it had was a power jack on it, and it's a box, a reasonable size box, you know, sort of 5 or 6 inches on a cube, and it had a little power jack in it, and you look at it and you pick it up and you shake it and there's nothing inside. You can't hear anything moving inside. And then you wrap you wrap a knock sequence on the box.
Yeah.
Like this, you know. Right? Like some rap sequence. And so I've designed mine to knock back the time.
Of course.
Beautiful.
Go figure. So
gorgeous.
I've got all of the. That's another circuit board in the. There we are. There's another circuit board there.
Okay.
With an ESP32, of course, because you have to have wireless-based control for this. It uses just a small piezoelectric sensor and a small solenoid.
Okay.
It's actually a different design to the one I've got in the box right now. And it's got a little rubber plunger on it. But I made the box this morning out of about a half-inch thick oak. So it has a real talk sound to it, right?
Oh, nice.
So I'll show this to you next week when it's completed. But I was even thinking that I'd put like a wireless loop a charger in there, so there's absolutely nothing to the outside world. It just sits on this base, charges up an internal battery, and just sits there waiting to be knocked on.
So if you knock it differently, will it give you the date?
No, I have been thinking about that, but right now it's what's the cut and the hair shave 2 bits?
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
So, but you can program it to do anything. But anyway, I just thought that was an amusing take on.
Very nice.
A knock box.
So are you using network time, I guess, for the time source?
No, I've got a real-time clock in there because I just find it handier. But yes, I could use NTP. Oh, I will show you one other thing.
I built a knock box for my Miata. If you knock on the window in a certain pattern, it activated the door locks and unlocked.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's brilliant.
So one of the problems I think we've all faced, or those of us who play around with the ESP32s and ESP8266s, is this whole idea of how you get SSID password information into it. And it's a pain to put it in the source code when you compile. It's sometimes a pain to use a wireless, like an AP, to open it up, look at it, and so on. And I came across this little beastie. Look at it. It's a credit card size, right? And it's a full ASCII keyboard.
Oh, good God.
And it's an I2C interface. So, you know, your software just polls it. If it doesn't see it, then it moves on. But if it sees it, on the little screen, it comes up with the SSIDs that it can see. You can type in the password and off you go. I mean, none of this having to pull up a web page and so on. But I just thought that was so cute. Look at that.
Beautiful.
So what are the contacts? Are they just capacitive touch contacts, or?
No, they are full detent little micro switches.
Oh yeah, okay.
But do you have shift and function there too, or?
Oh yeah, there's. Sorry, I'll do that. Let's see. You can see it.
Yeah. Oh wow.
It's got everything on there, including in the corner the 4 directional arrows. Look at that. It's got a little a micro. It's just an 80 mega. But if you notice very carefully, there are no passives on there whatsoever.
Wow.
It's a damn clever design. And they've even got a little WS2812B addressable LED in there, which flashes different colors if you have, for instance, shift key on, or you have you press the function key. But there are 0 passives. I thought that was really neat.
Sir, you mean that there's no capacitors?
No capacitors, no resistors, no nothing. It's just switch contacts.
Is it like a Charlie setup?
So there's not even a crystal?
Be. No.
Wow.
So I guess the timing doesn't really matter very much anyway in the code. It's an 80 an Atmo Mega, and it's just replete with I/O, but there's not one resistor, not one capacitor on there.
Cool.
It's $40 on Amazon.
14 on Banggood. And look how thin it is.
Wow.
Isn't that cute?
So what's the I/O, the connector in the side? What's that? What is that?
It's a 4-pin, so it's an I²C.
Oh, okay.
And so the surprise for me is that it runs off 5 volts rather than 3.3.
Oh.
Being an Arduino, yeah.
I've got to sign off.
Adrian, it's also it's $5 American on a place called the M5 Stack.
Yes, it is M5 Stack.
Ah.
I have not downloaded the M5 Stack software because, frankly, I'm a little leery because it's a very big and cumbersome load. And they do a lot of stuff. It's like a little kit, right? Where you can plug on modules, you can plug on displays and GPS modules and LoRa modules and so on. But I've got my thing attached to another LoRa module assembly. So, and that has a nice little sensor there. You know, the BMP 280 for pressure, temperature, and humidity. And I stick one of these in the garden, and I can read soil temperature and pressure, you know, and temperature and so on remotely. And if I need to reach anybody, I just tap out a little message. So there we are.
That's pretty cool.
Needless to say, I have to run in the house to listen to my message.
So that's not the Internet of Things. That's the Internet of Vegetables.
There we are.
Adrian, I got a question. Sorry, do you have to run off, Adrian?
No, go ahead. No, I will be leaving shortly, but yeah.
It's funny about the M5 Stack. Doug gave that to me the other day. And I went on the website, and I must admit, I could not make out head or tail of that website in the sense that I couldn't find out what the hell they were making. Like, what was the point of the website? They're obviously making a lot of stuff. Matter of fact, the thing you just shown me is I get the impression they're always doing stuff rated to the ESP32 or the 8266. Can you tell me, you've now bought something from them, so can you tell me what M5 Stack is?
Well, I think, as I mentioned before, I think it's a platform for you to develop your own code. But they've made it very easy to stack on, like shields, one on top of the other, whatever functionality you want to put on it. One little thing they did was they've got a tiny little wristband with a little box on it, and they're selling that as a wristwatch. So their base unit is very small. It has an accelerometer in it, an ESP32, a real-time clock, has a few other bits and pieces on it, but and then you just plug on extra sensors and things like that. So yet another of those play kits. I'm not interested in M5 stack per se, but that's the cutest little expansion keyboard I've ever seen.
Absolutely, yes, yes. But the point is that you're right. The phrasing that seemed to be as if they were talking about shields, and the way they have shields that stack onto the Arduino Unos and Arduino boards like that. But to me, the ESP32 mine just plugs into a prototyping board, right, or two prototyping boards, and it's not obvious to me how you stack an ESP32 onto an ESP32.
I'm not sure I understand you correctly, Greg. The way I looked at the M5 stuff was that there was a bare board, a sort of a board with expansion capability, which had an ESP32, an accelerometer, and a couple of other things.
Okay.
And then you stack other bits and pieces like an OLED display.
Okay.
Or, I don't know, a GPS module.
Okay.
Or whatever. And one of the expansions, they have a general expansion on I²C, was the little keyboard.
Okay.
And they use Grove. The Grove, they call it a Grove interface. It's nothing more than a 4-pin JST connector at 2 mil pitch or something or whatever. Anyway, so if somebody was starting from scratch with the ESP32, it actually might be a very interesting module to start with. I don't know.
Okay, I guess I would have thought that module would have been more prominent than it was on their website. If that's kind of the root thing, the base thing they sell, they sure hit it up well on that website.
Okay.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, thanks, Adrian.
Welcome.
Developers don't always make the best websites.
No, this is an excellent example too. They had a big thing about, the guy that founded it and what brilliant he was and da 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 da. But I was thinking, whoever designed this website, it certainly doesn't tell me as a potential customer what the hell they're selling.
Yeah. Stealth marketing.
Exactly. Yes.
One of the things
I too have to leave. Dan, could you email me sometime the next day or two? I'd like to piggyback on your CNC purchase.
Oh, okay, sure, can do. I haven't placed that order yet, so we could save a little on shipping.
Okay, there's
All
my
right.
email address is in the chat.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I'll send that out today.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay,
thank you, everyone.
Okay, bye. Good to see you again.
Bye.
So did we do any CNC stuff today? I guess not, eh? It was the other...
There were questions earlier.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was busy changing tires on my wife's car.
Pat tabled a couple of machines he's looking at. He found a real cute little one.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a little nervous about that one that I posted because they've only got 3 orders for it, though they do sell lots of much bigger CNC machines.
So the seller might be novice, you mean?
Well, they certainly haven't sold a lot of that particular one. But they do have sold a lot of bigger 6040s and so on. So I mean, it's not like some of these shops you see where they're selling a CNC machine, but they also sell, perfume and leather goods and women's fashion.
I've bought from them, and you get your product, but you won't get a lot of tech support from them.
Yeah.
If you have a question, there'll be a turnaround while they find their engineers.
Yeah. So. But that's not a bad price. It ends up what, $236 plus the shipping, the duty and GST and stuff. So, as my quest to find the cheapest 3018 on the planet.
And you can use that CNC to make your next CNC.
I was thinking that actually, because really the thing that bothers me the most is the short Z-axis, and
agreed.
How many?
And
Well, the one you showed us was 1.8 inches, wasn't it?
yeah,
That's not bad.
that's not bad. No, it's just it'd do almost everything I think that I have immediate need for, but I don't know. It's if you and not being able to handle steel, I guess, but none of them are going to be able to handle steel.
Your bit lengths are going to be a bigger limit, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're looking for like a lot of plunge depth, you're gonna.
Oh, because you'll hit the shank and
Yeah.
We're working with really small bits, so
Yeah.
the z-axis becomes a non-consequential number.
Oh, that's a really good point.
Well, yeah, except your fixturing. Like if you're starting with if you want to engrave on a little
Yeah.
box, for example, the height of the box has to fit underneath the, the truck.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, there should be a way to lower the deck, or if they had especially if you're doing smaller stuff, if they had a recessed area where you could take part of it out and drop it in and attach it from the side or something like if it was just a vise there, then you could clamp it wherever you wanted in the height, as long as it's not interfering with the mechanism underneath it, right? But it's, you got to put your vise on top of the deck, and then, you're losing a lot of Z-axis.
I was looking at that problem because one of the younger gentlemen that came to the meetup recently, he wants to cut on boxes, and then but on the 3018 style, the vertical upright, you just replace that, and then the whole thing is like way up here. Now
Yes, if it's always the same height. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You got to take it all apart to do it.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder if there'd be a way of having that vertical part, adjustable, because then you could machine on the ends of things and things like that, eh?
Well, what if you just put 4 threaded rods on each one of the corners of the gantry type thing, and
just crank it up and down,
and
like
just
a
crank it
laser,
up and down, like
like a laser table.
Yeah.
Another one is like Ray mentioned last time. In a lot of the CNCs, the cutter comes over the edge of the front.
Yeah,
and that gives
makes a
you
lot of
maybe
sense
there might be an opportunity. So if you designed a machine where that's in the design, then you could easily, now you have machining on sheets and on ends of things. So those two things together might be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you've raised a point that kind of concerns me too. That not that I'm considering, we never know how things will go, but I don't plan to get a CNC. But the one thing, if I would be, I'd want something that would be able to cut 3/4 inch plywood, like on many, many, many passes, of course, but be able to handle a depth that, to handle that kind of depth. And to me, particularly when I see they're selling a machine as an engraving machine, I really question whether it's even thinking in those terms or not.
Well, I think, if I can jump in, I think Ray's point is perhaps one of the more poignant, in that even with an 1/8 of inch drill bit, you typically don't get much more than about 19 to 20 millimeters of flute.
Yeah, true.
So, you might want to think again if you were plunging deeper than that or cutting very much deeper, because the other thing is that even if on like an 1/8 of an inch drill bit, which is the same, where the bit is the same width as the cutter itself.
Anyone else here?
Yeah, no, I think his internet.
I think his internet just went. His garden is taking too much bandwidth. He probably hears us now. We just can't hear him.
I don't know.
Should probably try turning off.
Right on the edge of saying something interesting.
I know.
Yeah.
There he is.
Yeah, for example, though, if you're just making the templates you've got on your desk shot there, right? I assume that's what you've got there, where you're cutting out the center of a template guide. That's still like a plunge cut, but there's not a problem with the depth, because you're only cutting maybe 1/4 of an inch or something at one shot, and you're not going straight down into it, so you're not going to hit the, you're making a bigger hole and then making it bigger as you spiral out, right?
There's Adrian back.
Sorry.
You were saying?
I don't know. I've had it done before I knew I'd lost everybody. So.
You're talking about Ray and the plunging and.
Yeah, I was just saying, you know, you may actually want to watch out with that, because if you're plunging deeply to cut that last little bit of, you know, your 1 inch or whatever,
yes,
you've got a lot of rotating bit in a gap, and the temperature goes up through the roof.
Good point. Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, if you have a small feed rate though, and
Yeah.
you go, and plus for really thick
And there's
stuff,
a lot of
could you
material
not,
present.
could you not turn it over and get it registered into the same spot and then cut the other half of the distance from?
Yeah, there are all sorts of ways around it, but and you're absolutely right. Registration pins and so on, and Darcy is probably more familiar with how that works and so on than I am. But all I'm suggesting is that sometimes things like a chip ejection can be a challenge in a very deep punch. And I have a little thermometer, you know, one of those IR thermometers, and I have noticed the bit temperature can go up quite dramatically. And
this is in wood, right? In cutting wood.
Yeah, and the tool, and of course that's the other thing, because the wood fibers, especially with things like plywood, the wood fibers are all over the place, and they're not always sheared cleanly, so they're interfering, even though they've, you know, they sort of bulge out and so on, and interfere with the. It's
in terms of 3/4 of an inch, which I cut fairly often. I'm not having any trouble.
What's the material?
Mostly I'm just using pine, but I've cut plywood as well.
Oh, okay. So you have successfully cut 3/4 inch plywood then?
I cut a 3/4 inch oak.
Oh my God. Okay.
How many passes does it take to get through that?
Well, I didn't go through it. I kind of sculpted it. Just say, where is that?
Oh, I see. Okay.
My son is Samuel is into rock climbing, and one of the things he practices on is what they call a hangboard, which is designed with different thicknesses or different depths of plunges. And so we fabricate this, of course, in hardwood. So we're using rock maple and a 6mm cutter. And I got up to 200 degrees. So
yeah, that's.
You know, but that was a 6mm cutter with a 1.5 kilowatt head. So you know, at a reasonable feed rate. So all I'm suggesting is that you have to watch the kind of power and the feed rate and the plunge cut and depth, especially as you go deeper and deeper.
Okay. Ray, let's have a closer look again what you were cutting there.
This is oak.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And
what size is your machine?
I got a 3040. So
okay.
It's more to do with, and I cut this on a 300 watt. And I think I was being really cautious with this, so I was doing 1mm step downs. I'm a lot less cautious now than I was then. So I do like 5mm or 10mm step downs now. But I just tiptoed forward until I discovered, you know, what the machine would take.
Right.
Okay. And what is that done with a 1/8 inch cutter?
That was a 1/8 inch cutter.
Okay. Okay. So it's certainly doable then, and on hardwood too.
Yeah, I had no problem.
Interesting. Okay, interesting.
Other than my bits dull.
Yeah.
So, you know, you got that little bit hogging out that much wood, and it dulls up after a while. So you're looking at a consumable price.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Well, like Adrian says, you're cutting the same chip of wood 50 times.
Exactly.
So
you know, the swarf just floats around in there.
Cutting deeper is better if your machine will handle it.
Yeah, so you've got more of the fluid engaged in the material, and you're spreading the yeah, instead of always using the same little piece. None of these cutters have active cooling like you have on metal, I would assume. You know, where
I think
they're
so, no. Unless you,
hollow on the inside and you pump coolant through the.
maybe if you're vacuuming, you might moving a little bit more air around the
Right.
area possibly, and you're moving the swarf. It might so the swarf has heat. You're pulling that out, and then
Right.
it's more exposed to moving air. That I mean, it's not like air has a low heat capacity, but still, it's better than
Yeah.
just radiation. You know.
The when I was cutting some aluminium on the 6090, and I actually found blowing the swarf away with compressed air rather than trying to vacuum it up. Yes, it was messier, but aluminium's messy as it is.
Mm-hmm.
But this actually worked a little bit better because I think the cooler air was probably helping the cutter stay at a reasonable temperature too.
Yeah.
I have little dust shields at the back, and it was collecting the vast majority of the swarf. But nevertheless, rather than vacuum, the pressure was actually, I think, was doing a better job of clearing the crap from the material.
Well, plus compressed air comes out at a lower temperature than ambient, right? Because it's lost
Right,
so much
right.
energy in the compression. So when it's like really shooting it with a refrigerant a little bit.
But aluminium is weird in the sense that the swarf becomes sticky.
Yeah, I heard
Yes,
of that. Yeah.
yes, yes.
So,
Is this 6000 series aluminum?
oh, I don't know. It's just cheapo crap that I got at.
Oh, okay.
Now you're getting technical.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Cheapo crap 20 I-44
Okay.
from metal supermarkets, and I just had I had a block that I was cutting bits out of. It seemed to work okay, but it you have to watch. It speeds and feeds, and I know everybody who does CNC is very conscious of this. I must admit, in the plastic, I've been a bit, I haven't really played with it, but as soon as you go outside of something as malleable as HDPE, my God, it really makes a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that different grades of aluminum have very, very different milling properties. You know, some of them are very brittle and very hard to mill, and very different heat characteristics too.
Doug's had a lot of, he's been playing with aluminium quite some time now, and he's had a lot of really nice quality results from it. And again, you know, it's getting the speeds and feeds right, doing a first pass above the table, so that you're not plunging, you know, if there's any irregularity in the planarity of the table, you're not plunging your bit in deeper than normal. And 0.1, 0.2 millimeter per pass on aluminium. And he's got some really nice examples of some very nice stuff, including racks and you know, for a rack and pinion.
Yep.
That have come out very nicely with small cutters. So.
Is there such a thing in CNC as the fly cutter you'd use on a real milling machine?
I think the speed would be far too high for that.
No, but the spindles are variable. Yeah, the spindles are variable. If you had a brushless motor that you could control the speed on and still maintain the torque, could you not put a fly cutter on a CNC and be able to just, you know, basically spread out all that? You still get decent feed rates without having to run the machine at such incredible speeds.
Sorry, when you mean a fly cutter, are you looking at like leveling?
Yeah, exactly. If you're trying to, yeah, exactly. If you're leveling,
you know, Derek at Makerspace North, yeah, he used to, I think he used to run, when he put a new tabletop on his CNC machine, he ran a whacking great fly cutter and just went straight up, you know, just across there to flatten the surface.
Yeah.
So yes, I think it's perfectly again, speeds and feeds and not taking, you know, not taking too much bite out of it, I think is perfectly doable.
Well, the other nice thing about them too is they use inserts, right? So when, you know, you don't, you know, you can just change the insert when it gets dull. You don't have to throw away the entire, you know, bit, and they're really tough on milling. But I don't know if I've only ever seen them for real milling machines. I've never seen them
But
for,
the things would, I mean, what we're looking at is what, correct me if I'm wrong, but those are called E11 or the collets.
yeah, exactly. And I've never seen a fly cutter that would fit in an ER11. I mean,
Exactly.
They're, you know, they're like Morse taper, you know, that's more like half an inch.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I've used a 1/4 inch. I have a 1/4 inch collet for the spindle, and I've used a what do you call it? It's the keyhole plunge cutter.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen those bits?
Yeah, I got one. They're really fun.
And you know, if you buy a painting sometimes that's been laminated onto a board, if the board is very thin, it's sometimes hard to get any hardware to, you know, any purchase with screws or anything on the back. So they often use a plunge keyhole bit to create an undercut. And I've used it very successfully, and that was a 1/4 inch shank. I don't know. What about Ray? Have you done anything in your wood to, you know, things like that?
No, I have some chucks that'll handle bigger stuff, but I haven't experimented with it yet. And I have some just rotor bits. I thought maybe I could just slap one of those on and see what that does.
Yeah.
You know, and just now that I'm up to 500 watts, boy, oh boy, do I like 500 watts compared to watt. More power is just so much nicer. Yeah.
Well, see, now you got to make the next jump and go to 1.5 kilo, like Adrian's machine here.
Oh boy, that's my field of dreams.
And it's probably brushless too, right, Adrian?
Oh yeah.
So nice and quiet and lots of torque.
Water cooled. In fact, my aquarium pump that circulates water is noisier than the spindle whine. That's for sure.
Oh,
right?
Wow.
I thought you were going to say your spindle is heating your aquarium.
Yeah. So
yeah,
Darcy,
well, that's not in the cards this time around. But
so Darcy, remember you had put up for sale some big honking 12mm rod and bushings. So I'm building a CNC table, albeit it's coming together very slowly, for my plasma cutter. So because I'm thinking I should make the leap from plastic to steel.
Oh no.
So I have a really nice little plasma cutter that my son wired in. It requires its own separate 240 volt feed from the pony panel. So I think I spent more money on the friggin' armored cable than I did on the plasma cutter itself. But it slices through 1/2 inch mild steel like butter.
Wow.
It is astounding. So we've been fabricating all sorts of stuff for the tractor and things. So that's kind of neat. But I want to put a CNC on it. I want it to be controlled by G code. And then we have some interesting opportunity.
Sorry, Adrian, what is this? Okay, what is this you're describing?
It's a plasma cutter.
Of like as in oxyacetylene cutting kind of thing?
No, well, no, it's not oxyacetylene. It actually
electricity.
It's electric. Yes, so it strikes an arc in a little wand, the head of a wand.
Okay.
And then uses compressed air flowing through it to blow the ionized air from the arc downwards, right, out of the nozzle. And it does so at about 50 psi, and it's a very, very narrow nozzle. So you get this narrow cutting torch. It's quite astounding. If you're doing something in 1/4-inch steel or whatever, you can literally, and you don't need goggles for it. Well, you use goggles, but you don't need a welding mask, right? Yeah. Because everything is being blown below the material surface. So it creates swarf. It's not a clean, it's not a perfectly clean cut, but it can be very easily cleaned up afterwards. But it's great for circles, freehand. It's wonderful.
This is obviously this is an industrial thing.
No, I kid you not. It's in a box, metal box about this big by that big by that big, and the biggest thing on it is the power cord. Which it's a huge power cord. It's like a dryer cord, right? It's 30 amps at 240 volts.
Yeah.
The lights dim in my neighborhood when I use it. But boy, is it ever fun to use.
I'm sure it's truly something I've never heard of. You should take some photographs and show us sometime.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, it's the company I bought it from is called Kicking Horse, and it's a Canadian brand, and it's a very thin. It's much easier to use than a welder, I find. I have a little TIG welder, if you want to fabricate steel, that's the way to go.
Does it have a pair of? Does it have an input so you can connect it to control the power of it?
Yes.
Or switch it off and on?
Yes, it's just on and off, and this thing, of course, rides above the material that you're cutting, so the fixturing is exceedingly easy. A lot of people have a water bath underneath it, and they put a honeycomb or slotted steel, so that the part can be supported, but like a water cutter. But it's really not necessary to go into water, the type of power that I'm talking about. But I think that could be really cool.
So the generic name of this is it's a plasma cutter.
Yeah.
Okay.
They use them a lot they have large format ones that they use in machine shops for doing custom fabrication and things like that. If you're, yeah, they've been around for a while. They're expensive as all hell, the big ones, $20,000-$30,000.
But I paid, I don't know, I think I got mine for less than $1,000. No, much less than $1,000. I think it was like $400 or $500, and it's a beauty.
How big's the bed?
569, presently sold out.
How much?
569, presently sold out.
Okay, I got the Kicking Horse 50, which I think is the 50 amp, or maybe it was the 30.
I'm looking at the 40.
I'll confirm which one I've got. Kicking Horse Resort. Let's go there.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, I'm not going to take your time. Yeah, we'll look. I'll send some photographs if you want, Greg.
That's fine. Well, hold on a sec. Ray, are you actually on a website now?
Yeah, I just posted the link in chat.
Well, why don't you just do a screen share?
Oh, well, gee, that would be too easy, wouldn't it? What am I thinking?
It's pretty light contact work too, so it makes for an easy CNC build.
Is that the model?
Okay.
Yeah, actually, that looks remarkably like the one I've got.
Apparently, it's fairly popular because it's sold out.
But it's remarkable. I have a welder, a Lincoln welder.
Yeah.
And it's this big and this tall and that wide, and it's heavy as all. Yes, it's 240 volt, but it's really heavy, and it's got a long cable to the wand, But if you look at this, the wand is so light. It's a third of the weight of the wand from the wire feeds. And if you notice on it, look, it's got the little paddle, which is the switch on the end, and it just plugs into the back. Yeah, so you put dried air in the back. There it is. Yeah, so there's the air and there's a pressure regulator. There's a big thick cable, and the big thick cable takes lots and lots of power.
Huh. So, but you need a compressor.
Yeah. And I bought a new compressor last year, American Standard, I think, or American something or other, and it is whisper quiet. It was on special.
Wow.
It was on special. It was bigger than the Pancake I was using, but the Pancake was so noisy it would rattle your fillings out, you know?
Yes.
Greg has a compressor in his living room. Have you got that video, Greg?
It's noisy. The cable houser thing, that's a Canadian Tire.
No, I meant the other compressor.
Manual.
I think you have a video of it.
Oh, yes. She's not as nearly as noisy.
Well, because you should see the video. I was hoping you were just going to roll out that video that you showed the other day. It was very fun to see.
Yeah, I think I still got it, but I have to find it.
Okay, so never mind then.
Because I don't think Adrian saw that.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's kind of I always dreamed about things like a plasma cutter, but my living environment isn't quite. It's just a little bit too big, and my lifestyle is a little bit more downtownish.
Then you've got better access to metal shops. Come on.
In theory, I know. In theory.
So this thing will cut through 1/2-inch plate steel?
Yes, and they say it will cut cleanly, 1/2 inch, and it will sever 3/4.
Okay.
So
this will be cleaner than using like an acetylene cutting torch.
Oh, absolutely. And
it'll probably do better than they claim, because in a CNC environment, you're very steady, like you feed rates and all that. It probably does even better than it claims.
Yeah, but what we saw in the link though is just basically the head for it. It doesn't include you don't have the bed and the CNC control.
No. But you add that yourself.
Yeah.
They sell, I think there are quite a few manufacturers who now sell CNC beds, and you bring your own plasma cutter, and it has a kind of universal head.
Right.
But that's the point. But Darcy made the point that you're riding above the material. So fixturing for the material is very straightforward. It's called gravity.
Because there's no torque on the material
right. And the head itself is very, very light. So
what kind of feed rates? How fast can it cut?
I think a lot depends on the material you're cutting, but I use a piece of wood, like a stick.
Yeah.
And I'll just draw the cutter along the wood, just to stabilize it, right? To give me and you can cut pretty quickly. I would say it's as fast as, say, maybe 1,000 millimeters a minute.
Wow.
Maybe 1,200.
Your hand motion looks like 5,000 millimeters a minute.
I don't know. Maybe. We were cutting some big thick plate for a winch on the front of the tractor, and Samuel just took out the unit and cut through. It was 1/2-inch steel, and it wasn't a clean cut. We had a little bit of work to do to clean it up with, you know, some grinding discs and stuff, but it dimensioned it perfectly.
Wow.
I'm curious, if it was driven by a CNC, could you do multiple passes over the same path for a deeper cut? Or is it limited like a distance from the cutter?
That's interesting. I don't know. Because I've never tried to use it on the surface, because it ablates the surface below the material, right? So it's blowing it out, you know. So you puncture the material, and as you draw the head, the compressed air is forcing the ionized gas, the plasma, down through the material, and it's ejecting below the material.
So if it doesn't get through, it's not going to work, right?
There are times when you have to do a second pass, but that's generally where it's failed to go through, as opposed to, you know, a controlled depth of cut.
Right.
So as it goes down, it might get really messy.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the way I imagine it then is if it doesn't get through the material, it'll be like trying to blow air into a closed Coke bottle. You just can't.
It does. Yeah.
It doesn't get through. So.
Yeah. It might sputter.
Right. So if you pre-drilled through thicker material to get it started. So if you created a pilot hole that's 1/8 of an inch or something like that to get it started, would you maybe then be able to handle thicker material?
Oh, absolutely. So if you go online and look at industrial uses of plasma cutter, you often see this funny little, with a CNC machine, you often see this funny little jog where the plasma cutter is started away from where the cut will be. It punctures through the material and then moves to where the cut
and then does the rest of the cut.
So it actually sort of uses a piece of the waste to make its first puncture.
Because that's less clean than when it's in linear cutting mode.
Yeah. However, what I do I start the plasma off the edge of the material and then draw it into the material.
Okay.
So the plasma is there as it touches the first edge of the material and all the way through.
Right. Yeah. So it sounds like you can't use these for pocketing, but it's just for doing straight through cuts.
Straight through cuts, but you can cut holes and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's a darn sight faster than drilling, right?
Oh yeah.
Because you literally, you know, like that, and you.
And what else could you use? I mean, if you had a piece of material that's 3 meters square, you know, you can't put that in even a large format bandsaw. You know, you just get to the point where what else would you use to cut it?
We'll use Ray's 500 watt.
Yeah.
It'll take a while.
Yeah. So
if you want, I'll see. I don't know how to do this technically, but if you want, I'll see if I can get some help, and I'll actually next time we meet, I'll take the welding table outside, and I'll actually do a live demo of cutting through some 1/4 inch steel or something.
I'd love that.
Awesome.
Cool.
So I guess with one of these, you'd be all set to be in the bank heist business. You could sort of be able to get through a lot of safe doors in short order.
And precisely.
Yeah.
The problem, Dan, is that now you've said it and it's in the public domain. I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm already implicated. So
you have to find an appropriate outlet.
Yeah, that's right. You don't find many 240 volt welding outlets next to the vault door.
So if you read about a bank heist in the paper and you see the picture where they broke in, it's a perfect square, like exactly right. That's Adrian's work.
Yeah. Of course, real safes. Just for the public record, real safes are much thicker than 1/2 inch steel.
Oh, and they're full of asbestos and all kinds of other materials too.
Yeah.
have
Yeah,
to
because they
park
gotta
your
survive
cyber
fires.
truck up next to it and plug it in.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's very interesting. So I take it, Daedrian, your intention is to CNC this?
Well, what I'd like to do, and I can't help thinking that what I'd like to fabricate is something that can be put together very, very quickly. So I don't have to dedicate space. You know, that's half the issue, isn't it? We're all facing, because, you know, our better halves determine how much space we have generally, or our living environments, whatever. And then you try and fit the appropriate tools into the space in the best possible manner. You know, everybody wants the bigger CNC machine so you can tackle the small projects, but you can expand it to an 8x4 sheet. Yeah. So I would very much like the idea of a CNC machine that breaks down. So maybe a base plate, for instance, that I bolt the carriage to.
Right.
But then I can break it down very easily. So you've given me some, there will be some food for thought here. But as I said, because you're not carrying very much weight on the head, the gantry doesn't have to be enormous.
Yeah.
And you could probably get away with smaller bearing types and so on. And maybe smaller motors and so on, as opposed to, you know, thinking about this as a huge machine with, you know, massive rigidity and so on. I mean, there's no weight.
Well, there's no weight, but there's, more importantly, I think there's no torque from a great big spinning motor that is biting into the work, right? So, yeah, so something very, very lightweight might be able to move it around very effectively.
Your gantry could be like, instead of having rails on both sides, put 2 rails on one side, like, you know, 2 feet apart.
Yeah.
And then it would like stick out like an arm.
And then stick
Actually,
out,
I've seen this.
Yeah.
I've seen this.
I have too.
Yeah.
I have too. There was a video of a guy at one of the makerspace things in California. And he had done something like this, but one of his interesting comments was that the biggest problem he had with the electronics was the surges and the induced currents when you basically are turning this thing on and off, right? So you have to have exceedingly well isolated control, I think, because the amount of current is unbelievable, right? It's a 30 amp connection at 240 volts.
Holy smokes!
Yeah. Wow. Well, Ray showed the plug, right? I mean, it's a massive, like a big dryer plug, but it's huge, and it has to be on a dedicated circuit. So, yeah.
You really wouldn't need a bed, though. You just, with the big metal, you could just clamp it onto the side of the metal and just run it. Just eliminate the need for a bed altogether.
Oh, use the material itself as your...
Yeah, because there's no, like you said, there's no torque. You could just, there's no load on it. You just need something to grip onto, and then just run it.
What I was thinking
strong magnets, maybe.
Just lay it on.
No. You, but you also have to support the material, right? Because the plasma goes through the material and then sputters out.
Right.
So you need, you know, whatever you have has to be raised above, you know, the material has to be raised.
A couple bricks or something, you know.
You may be right. You know what? Why don't we have a CNC plasma party?
Yeah, right.
Sure.
When this COVID crap
I would
is all
love
over,
to, but it's not in my budget.
That's right.
No. But when this COVID crap is all over, we'll have a party and so on, and bring up your favorite piece of steel.
Yeah, right. On that note, I'm gonna leave, guys. Thanks. Been good talking to you. We'll see you next Sunday. Bye, guys.
Great. See you, Greg.
See you.
Bye.
Oddly, I have a favorite piece of steel that's 1/2 inch thick. Actually, it's not.
There you go. I've got one in my shop too. But Adrian, what I was thinking is, couldn't you just put do it as like rack and pinion. So you just put racks on in a square, and just put a gear motor on there, which would move along back and forth in 2 directions on the rack. So you just
that sounds like something doable. Yeah.
Very, very simple, and just your steppers or gear motors would be able to then move it in 2 directions, and you're just at the intersection of those. Very, very simple.
It's interesting. All this I've been following online. I'm sorry I haven't been able to participate, but I've been following online all of your discussions about the small CNC purchases and so on. And I've seen quite a few of the laser designs using the 2020 and the 2040 extruded aluminium to make chassis. And I have a little laser cutter downstairs. I don't know what it is. It's whatever, 30 by 40 or something. And all it is extruded aluminium.
Yeah. And little wheels.
Yeah.
I got one of those too.
Yeah, so if you kept any of the metal swarf or any of that crap away from it, which should be quite easy, I suspect, then maybe the gantry need be nothing more than a couple of those pieces of aluminium.
Yeah, because it's light enough, so there wouldn't be any even a little bit of deflection is not going to matter that much.
Oh, you've created a monster, Dan. I'm gonna go play with this.
Well, you can, racks are cheap. It's just a triangle shaped tooth. I mean, you could probably cut them yourself if you really wanted. But,
why don't you cut your racks and the material as your first job?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Put teeth on the outside of the metal, and then just put some pinions on it.
Well, that's what usually they use in a big lathe to drive the head left and right. Is that mechanism, right? It's a rack that engages,
right.
And for the manual control, you're just rotating a gear against a rack until the half nut grabs the threaded rod. But so you could, without. It depends, I guess, if you need the accuracy of doing an Acme thread and all that, but you might not. How many steps in a stepper motor? Is it usually 200 steps to the rotation?
Often, but not necessarily. Yeah.
That's plenty accurate over a long distance if the wheel diameter is if the gear diameter is not too big.
Well, the other idea is if you're going to do that. You could take a relatively small NEMA and put a 4-to-1, 5-to-1, 6-to-1.
Oh, yeah, of course you could. Yeah.
A reduction with a belt, and now you could drive it. You could drive it relatively easily. Now, why not a threaded rod?
It's the backlash. That's all.
I don't care about the backlash. We're talking about this is like what. It's like framing, or otherwise known as 1/4-inch joinery.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it depends how big you're going to make it. See, in my mind, you're making something that's going to be like 6 foot by 8 foot or something like that. That's going to be, you're going to be able to put a full sheet of plywood into it. But if you're making something that big, then the threaded rod would deflect all over the place.
Hold on. The last I checked, 3/4-inch plywood is not electrically conductive.
Oh, you can't you can't cut through wood with this?
No. No. I think if I tried to cut through wood, I would burn the house down.
Oh, okay.
What about ironwood?
Iron. Oh, there we are. There we are.
No, you just got to soak it in some water first, and then it conducts really well.
Actually, it is a good question as to whether it can cut anything else. I know it cuts bronze and copper and.
I don't think it'd do a good job because wood doesn't melt.
Well, it does at a certain temperature. At a certain temperature, you can vaporize it.
I don't think so. I think it would be a shitty job, and then we'd come to you, Ray, and you'd mill it with your 500 watts.
Yes, that's true.
Nevertheless.
So, what is the biggest thing you think you'd put into it in terms of making your bed for this thing? How much space you need?
Well, we've during this period, I've made a series of additional tables for my workshop. And one of the things is that I want a sheet metal top.
Okay.
So I want to be able to slice, 16, 12 gauge steel cleanly, right?
Okay.
And unless you have a huge brake or press or one of those big industrial things, it's actually quite hard to do.
You know, I've got a big steel table sitting in my garage. Not doing anything, just taking up a lot of space.
Ooh.
Stainless steel top, all metal.
Then maybe, Dan, it is time for you to look at Kicking Horse.
Yeah, that's what I knew you were going to go. And I've already got a welding outlet in the shop. So I've already got a 200 amp, I think it's, or sorry, 200, 220, whatever. I think it's 30 amp or 40 amp.
Yeah. Well, there you are. I've created a monster.
Yeah, you've created a one. Yeah. So maybe instead of buying a 3018, I should be looking at one of these. So.
And just think, you could cut in steel the risers that allow people to lift the gantry so that they can inscribe on the top of boxes.
That's right. There's got to be a huge market for that. Darcy's laughing. Oh, well. So the other thing you're going to need, though, is seeing how this is so versatile. If you're going to go to all this trouble, you might as well put an extra axis on here and make it so that you can have it rotate, and then you can cut through steel pipe and tubing and things like that, right? So you want to be able to rotate the material. So put a roller on it, so you could put a pipe on it, and then the cutter on top. And as it rolls, it would just cut through.
What an interesting, yeah, that's a really interesting idea. The way we normally cut pipe right now, Samuel has a Makita bandsaw, the handheld bandsaws.
Yep.
And you slot a 18-volt, 5 amp hour battery in it, and it's got a bandsaw blade but a relatively small field. And he does that for his electrical work, right?
For conduits and things like that, yeah. But now you could do great big iron pipe and things like that in that.
Wouldn't that be fun, eh? Listen, let's all blow away this COVID virus, just like we did down in the States. And then we have a CNC party and a plasma party.
Yeah. Well, that is what you're talking about though is interesting, because with that and CNC, you really could go into small scale manufacturing, and there's a lot of added value in making parts that are like that. So you could put together a kit for a CNC that would be made out of even 1/4-inch steel, would be much stiffer and better than any of these things that we're looking at now. In terms of rigidity, you would be able to make an incredibly rigid structure that would be precise, easy to bolt together.
Yeah. My 6090 has big, thick aluminium cheeks. Everything it really is solidly built. And I was very lucky because I got it at a time when shipping costs were pretty reasonable and not more than the device was worth,
Right. Yeah.
And it arrived fully assembled. That's the point. I mean, but I wonder if I could cut things like the outline of the side cheeks or something. And even if it wasn't absolutely precise, but if it, for instance, just had the little dip where you needed a hole.
Yeah.
And so it's you use its imprecision to give you a reference. That might be interesting. Yeah.
So all of a sudden you can now take, $80 worth of raw material and turn it into something you can sell for $600.
All right. So I'm just thinking of the logo for the O'Hara Jones plasma crap cutter. Anyway, Darcy, we've kind of taken over the CNC.
Oh, no, I'm
discussion.
totally fine. Don't worry about me. I'm just sitting here enjoying myself.
Now we just got to figure out how to make it work with an ESP32, right?
Oh, well, that's easy. Oh, Dan, I've got something for you.
Yeah. Oh.
That's a full port of Gerbil
Yeah.
onto ESP32.
Wow.
Indeed.
And I've got
Nice.
more. So I've used every single pin on the IO, every single pin. So it's 3 axis.
Yeah.
You can see.
Yeah.
That's 6 pins.
Oh yeah. Then all of the flood control, mist, and all of the rest of the stuff up there.
Yeah.
And on this side you have the X, Y, Z limit.
Okay.
Inputs. You've got probe. You've got e-stop.
Nice.
Did
you
blah,
design this board?
Yeah, that's my board.
That's your board?
Yeah, look, would we know?
Oh, it's yeah. Oh, there we go. Yep. Wow.
It's made
That's
of wood.
impressive.
And it's made of wood, entirely out of wood.
And lots of 3-hole components too.
It's all through hole because
That's how we know Doug had nothing to do with
But
this.
it's all modular.
No, I do have a surface mount board. Don't be so cheeky.
Well, that one's mainly a modular, right? You got your ESP. It's all header. It's all header,
Yeah.
right?
Actually, the principal reason for doing it this way is that you're going to have to do some through hole anyway because I'm using the standard Palulu modules.
Yeah.
But look, there's my camera board, and look at the surface mount crap on there.
Yeah.
And a lot of through hole.
And some diodes. Yeah.
Did you do all the place on all that manually, or did you do reflow to get them all in there?
Oh no, I reflowed them. I reflowed the surface mount components first.
Yeah.
And then just finished it up with the through hole.
Yeah, that's nice.
So including that friggin' connector, which is a pain in the butt.
It looks surfacey.
Sorry?
You can't just do it surface?
Yeah, it is surface, but the pads are exceedingly close to each other.
Oh, I see.
And so getting a short there. So that's nothing really. That's nothing more than a few components, a CH340 USB interface.
Yeah.
And regulation and a few other bits and bobs.
Okay. So you're feeding that from USB?
Yeah.
As well for power?
So there's a camera. There's a camera there, and then I've got power at the top with that. I love these little modules.
Yeah, I know they're. I think they're in every single project you make, aren't they? Those little buck
converters?
converters?
It's like, if you want a power supply, a 10-watt power supply at 5 volts, why bother reinventing the wheel? Those things are cheap but yeah.
I was thinking, someone should really make a bunch of
There's
little
our global connector.
modular buck converters with standard barrel connectors on them, so you just stack them together to get the output you want.
That's a good idea.
You could start with like a 24-volt power supply and take it down to 5 or 12 or whatever it is you need.
They do make a 3.3 volt version of that particular device, but I like it because it's cheap, cheerful. It has relatively small footprint, as you can see, and you're right. I use them in everything. Right, and there's another board. Yeah, there she is at the bottom.
Yeah. So you're sending these boards out to get made, I guess. These are the
yeah. It's the same company that Doug turned me on to, PCB Way.
Yeah.
And I found them to be pretty good. So yeah.
What's the turnaround time on that stuff?
Well, how long does it take you to get anything from China these days, right?
Well, I haven't had anything from China in months.
Before the COVID thing, I was using the Canada e-packet.
Yeah.
Costing, I think, 11 US or 14 Canadian. And I was getting it in 20 days. So I was keeping keeping a running average of the amount of time it takes to get these things. And PCBWay were very good. They were very fast and pretty good. Yeah. And there's another board with the. This is the one for. This board is the one for Adrian. Do you remember somebody came on the chat? His name is Adrian, another Adrian, who was asking for some components for his bioreactor.
Oh yes, that was about a month ago.
Do you remember Darcy? Yeah. He was asking. Yeah. So I've been in contact with him, and we're now working together. So this was the first board I put together. This is the prototype for the bioreactor. I'm short of a few of some H bridges there, but that's the board. So it has a stepper controller, and I used every single friggin' pin on an ESP32. There isn't one pin spare on that. So yeah. So I'm just waiting for the those bipolar H bridges, the L298s, to come in. But everything is so slow. My God. Yeah. And Doug's,
they don't send ships unless they're full, and nobody's ordering.
Right.
Yeah.
But also, Doug was saying that he's ordering from DigiKey, and the prices have gone up dramatically. And they're in a similar position, right? Because most of their stock probably comes from China or Japan or Korea or whatever. So very challenging.
Yeah, and even the express stuff. I mean, a lot of that is going in air freight in passenger planes, and those planes aren't traveling either. So it's tough. Okay, well, I'm gonna have to go. I need to cut some grass before dinner time. So
I'm going to show you, if you don't mind, I'm going to show you one more thing. So that's what Christy, my daughter-in-law, always says. I'm going to show you one more thing. This is a little display. It's a 2.4-inch OLED display. Okay. I haven't taken it. But it has both I2C and SPI access, and it is absolutely gorgeous. Anyway, I love displays. I love pretty colors and
so that's a color display.
Yeah. So just very, very nice. But having the combination of SPI and I2C.
That must have been a pretty penny, like $30 or something, though, eh?
No. These they're coming down in price. I think this is about $12 or $13.
What's the resolution of it?
This one is 128 by 64.
So I've got this guy here that is 128 by 160, and it's also SPI. And it's also got an SD card slot on the back. And,
yeah.
It was so cheap, I could not believe it. I think I paid $5 for it.
Yeah. The problem I find with the SPI is that they say, well, it's a small footprint. It isn't, because you've got,
look at the number of wires going to it.
Yeah, right? Exactly. But you often also will have a reset, and then they have this thing called DC, data control.
Yep.
Plus they've got MOSI, S-Clock, chip select, and so on. So you've already wasted about 6 or 7 pins.
Yeah, exactly. You might as well just have a parallel device, and that's
Yeah,
addressable.
yeah, exactly.
But they are a gorgeous color and so cheap.
Yes, indeed. And having said that, there's one that's the standard. This is like $3, and this is the standard 1.8 inch, 128 by 60.
Yeah.
Right, and again, a SPI interface.
Yeah,
Very
those are. I
standard.
mean, you can't beat those really because they're readable in almost any light condition.
Yeah.
Unlike some of the LCD stuff, which is, can be dicey unless it's backlit.
But you could take like an Arduino Pro Mini and attach it to that and turn it into an I2C.
You could.
Actually, yeah, that's it. That in fact, something like that would be very neat, actually, Darcy, because you, especially with Arduino, you do get I/O bound very quickly, and ESP 8266 really quickly. If you use SPI, you've got nothing else for anything else. You've got no other pins for anything else. And then you put that, you could put that, Dan, you weren't on the phone when I showed you this. Look at that little bugger.
Oh yeah, no, I saw that. That's your little
Oh,
keyboard.
yeah. Good.
You know what I was thinking about that? I didn't say anything at the time, but instead of doing the I2C interface on that, they should make a version of it with a battery, a coin cell on the back, so it can be self-powered, and an infrared LED. Because then on your device, all you'd have to have is the infrared receiver, which takes up no space, and then you could have a wireless keyboard access to do the same thing.
That's a good idea. There we are, Darcy. Just in case you had needed any more projects, there's a good one for you.
Yeah, so you'd end up with something like that, right?
It's like a TV remote, but you got the full keyboard instead of the
full and
typical-
and a touchpad for a mouse, right, on there. So this one's
Well, then why wouldn't we buy what you've just held up?
because, well, this is USB, so you can only really connect it to something that has a full USB host. I use it for controlling the Raspberry Pis, so I can just plug into the USB port and then connect it up and away you go. But it's this is overkill, and they're way more expensive. I think this was $50 or $60 or something. I can't remember, but a little bit overkill. You need something simpler like your credit card idea, but just to do, a wireless interface to it. Because for simple, I mean, the other thing they left out is a mouse interface. If you just want to, or something that would give you could do it with a capacitive touch, right? Something to give you an analog input into it, so if you can want to adjust the dial. A lot easier than typing in 17.775, whatever. Just drag your finger across and then hit the enter key for analog input.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Anyway, I've got 3 more of those little displays on those little cards on order, because I have lots of projects where I love the idea of just bringing it up, plugging it in. When the thing comes up, give it the SSID password, and then unplug it and move on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
That's always a problem. I mean, because the other solution is also cumbersome that you talk about, where if it can't get connected, it creates an access point. You have to connect to it, which means you got to disconnect from your other Wi-Fi in order to connect to the device you're trying to program. Bring up, it's messy at best.
It is messy, and I've often found that you can design the AP for a computer, okay, but then when you try and access it through a mobile phone, you've got a whole slew of others, because now all of a sudden you've got this tiny weeny little screen, and you're trying to, I guess there are other options, but an SD card, for instance, with your credentials on it or something like that, that would be easy too.
There must be a better way.
Yeah.
The other thing I don't like about doing that is you end up putting your credentials for the Wi-Fi into the source code, which inevitably, no matter what you do, ends up on GitHub. And then anybody that's browsing around on GitHub has got the username password for your Wi-Fi, right? Once they figure out who you are, then you get the guy in your driveway connected up to your Wi-Fi.
Best of luck getting Wi-Fi signal out here. That's for sure. Because I'm at the cottage, right? So
yeah, exactly.
So, I'm staying in style here. I'm very lucky, but you'd have to come a long way to get some signal strength down here. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, it's funny, you know, I can reach almost all my neighbors through Wi-Fi, and there's quite a distance between the houses. It's not a very strong signal, but I can see every one of my neighbors if I run the Wi-Fi analyzer.
Well, do you remember? It's interesting you say that, because do you remember quite some time ago you were asking the question of the group, how do you monitor whether your postman has been around?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And I don't know, did you ever see the solution that I created?
No, I don't know that I did.
It's a LoRa based, it's an ESP8266 with a little LoRa module on it.
Yeah.
And now, by the way, I don't know if you've seen this. This is an I should have shown Greg. This is an ESP32 with a 64 by 128 OLED display with a LoRa transceiver on the back, 833 and 864 and 933 megahertz.
Okay.
And it comes with an anal probe. So, which is, sorry, I'm not supposed to say that on a
YouTube.
On a friendly, just to show how friendly we are. It is unisex.
Yeah, exactly.
But this little device, all you need to do is put a battery and a switch, and all the thing does is when you lift the lid, it powers on, it sends a brief packet to say, I'm alive. It receives another packet in the reverse direction saying go to sleep, and it turns off.
Right.
And that's what I'm putting up on my mailbox, because I have to trudge up the hill to see if there's any mail for me, and I'm too lazy to do that. When you've got technology, you might as well burn some money.
What about power in the winter?
Sorry?
What about power in the winter?
It's fine. This little thing, I mean, it's only turning on.
No, I mean, like in the winter, your battery will freeze up, won't it? Or
no, well, it probably would. I haven't tried it in the winter, but anyway, look, don't complicate it. One chip solution with a micro switch on the lid on the little door flap.
Well, see, mine's a little different because I got to make it work with one of those Canada Post super boxes. So what I was thinking, same idea though, but instead of the micro switch, I wanted to detect when he opens it up, the light comes in. So I wanted to have a circuit there that's maybe even just a little simple solar cell that'll generate enough power to throw a FET or something like that to act as the switch. So I want to detect that it went from dark to light for it to fire up and do that instead.
Well, so if he delivers at night?
They never do. Well, yeah, we're lucky he delivers during the day. To deliver at night's just not going to happen.
Anyway, there's a simple solution with a 3-kilometer range. You can crank up the RF power on these things to about 10 dBmV. I wouldn't want to sit on one of these, I tell you. Or when it's plugged in.
So how well would it transmit from the inside of a aluminum box that's closed on 5 of the 6 sides?
Well, I'm thinking there's so much power there that it would leak out. You'd get sufficient. I mean, how far are you, away are you from your box?
I'm within Wi-Fi range, actually. I can get a Wi-Fi signal at the mailbox.
Then I'm sure a small packet of spread spectrum LoRa
is going to get there.
Will do that.
Yeah.
And the neat thing is that it will take you 10 minutes to determine whether or not that's going to work or not.
Yeah. Well, the other solution I came up is super low, or no, not necessarily low tech, but different. Is now I've got an HD camera pointed at the mailbox. So so there's some FFmpeg scripts that are running there that's monitoring when there's activity at the mailbox, and so I can just scan on my computer to see what's happened at the mailbox in the last little while and watch them that way. But when I was first going in this, I mean, we've had problems with our mailman and packages disappearing and ending up at his house. So I was hoping actually to put something in there as well that maybe had a camera, so I could sort of catch them in the act of diverting our packages into the into the wrong place and so on. So we had traceable packages that ended up at his house.
Oh my.
I think I mentioned last week. So, but and it's funny, you think that would get you fired because Canada Post takes mail delivery kind of seriously, but now they're all privatized, and these are all private contractors, and through another. So he's a subcontractor of a contractor, whatever. As near as I can tell, absolutely nothing happened. Even though he was taking our mail home to his place, and a whole bunch of it has disappeared, which I've never proved.
I mean, you got the mail problem and then theft. Like there's more than one layer here.
Yeah, and you know what Canada Post told me? I phoned Canada Post and talked to the security people.
What about the police? How about them?
That's what they said. Is there's nothing we can do. You have to call the police. But by the time that had happened, somebody had already, alerted him that we were onto this, and so he came for. Oh, I made a mistake and took it home by accident, and here's all this mail that should have been.
It's always a mistake. All thieves make a mistake.
Yeah.
There's probably the only thing you can really do functionally here is just video the guy, get evidence, and post it in YouTube, and then after that, everyone's compelled because you'll just go away, right? So you have. Well,
the other thing I was thinking is put a very attractive looking package that's coming from China and put a GPS tracker in it, and then just send it to myself, to make it look like it's something that he would want. And when the GPS tracker activates and it's in his house, then that'll pretty much tell me where my package went. So I'll either get it back again, in which case I'll just mail it again and take another shot at it, or I won't get it, in which case I want to know where it went, because I'm right now only getting about half of the packages I order from China make it.
This is an awesome idea to set this up to get a beautiful video of a thief in action.
It would be, wouldn't it? That's
an art in itself, filming thieves. That would be a great.
Mark Rober did a great YouTube video on Porch Pirates, where he made this glitter bomb thing. You probably saw it.
Oh, that's right, the glitter bomb. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's sort of like that same idea. I just want to know where these things are going. I refuse to believe that it's normal to have half of your packages disappear, and it's only the stuff from Canada Post, none of the stuff coming from courier or the stuff delivered by Amazon or it's all that is fine. But the stuff coming from Canada Post that goes to my mailbox, I'm about 50% failure rate on deliveries. Yeah, and nobody else in our group seems to have this problem. So I think it's just, it's not China in general. I mean, if they lost a whole container, then everybody would be losing their packages, but it's not, it doesn't seem to be that. I don't know. I'd love to catch the guy.
Sounds very doable.
Yeah.
I was thinking of putting like a birdhouse in the back and then trying to monitor it and have like a little video camera and a little microphone in there. So you'd have like a bird cam. Same technology. So it's, so however you solve that, I could probably copy you, or you could copy however I solve mine.
Well, yeah, I actually went out and bought, I got a bunch of Raspberry Pi Zeros that, they've got Wi-Fi. I've got the cameras for them. And that's a pretty capable platform. You've got enough horsepower in there that you can actually do some intelligent processing on the video, so you don't have to do it. And if I can get if the Wi-Fi reaches, then then it's pretty easy to keep track of everything that goes on near the mailbox. What might be even better is if I don't mount it in the mailbox, but mount it on the pole above the mailbox pointing down, so I can sort of see, I get better altitude for the Wi-Fi antenna, and I've got a better view of everything going on outside.
He's not going to commit the activity standing in front of your mailbox, though. Like, in a nutshell,
I don't know
because he has to go to other mailboxes, not just yours. He might do some door-to-door delivery, so he might have a truck. When this takes place isn't necessarily.
I know that's true, and it might not necessarily be this guy. It might be somebody at my postal station.
Up the stream, maybe.
Yeah, it could be upstream.
It's probably harder up the stream though than it is at the bottom at the last kilometer.
Well, when I've watched the guy on the camera, because I've now got a camera pointed there from a distance, but when I watch the guy on the camera, he drives up, he opens up his van, he opens up the big mailbox. There's a door that opens all of them at the same time, right? So the big door opens all of the mailboxes at the same time. Then he grabs a box full of mail. So it's sort of pre-sorted for that super box, and he starts going through it, and my packages are in there. So that's why I'm thinking maybe he does it right then, is because that's when he's sort of opening up the box and looking at what he's seeing.
Because he's not, so it's already been dropped. He's just distributing it more. Okay.
Yeah, so he's taking it from this box full of mail and letters and small packages, and he's going through them all and figuring out which super box thing it goes into, and then he closes it all up again.
And that's when he's gathering all the stuff that he likes.
I think so. So maybe he finds one that he really likes and he just tosses it back in the van,
but
right?
You're not gaining any good evidence. I think the good evidence is when he brings it home and opens it, and you have him on video somehow.
Yes, exactly.
As you put the video in there, inside it.
The camera inside the box, he opens it up, and there he looks at it. What is it I'm looking at?
Even a little peekaboo camera sticking out, so you can see the whole journey of it going through the whole mail system all the way to his home.
Yeah, I can't do it on Wi-Fi because I don't have Wi-Fi credentials for
GSM.
Yeah, so it would have to. I mean, maybe I could I've got old crappy cell phones. I could just.
That's what I'm saying, GSM. Yeah.
Yeah, just use one of them.
Put one in there. Open the Wi-Fi. It only has to run for a couple days.
Well, even then, that's the whole platform. It's got the camera, it's got a battery, it's got GPS coordinates in it. It's got everything I need. I just write a little app for the phone and put that in there. Right?
Oh, it's entirely in the phone. Good idea.
Yeah, just do it all on the phone.
I've got a 4 o'clock, so I'm going to say.
Okay.
Yeah, and I got to go cut some grass. So.
Yeah. Okay. See you guys then.
All right. Take care, guys.
Thanks for hosting this again, Darcy. Thanks for hosting this again. All right.
Yeah,
nice to see you guys. Bye, Dan. Bye, Ray.
Bye.
Bye, Olaf.